Welcome in, guys, to SEAL Team 7, episode Lifestream Zack. I am really happy to bring Vyzzuvazadth from Cosmo Canyon Observatory back from the dead. It's been, a while since he's been on the show, but every time he's on the show, we have a great time. And for those of you that don't know who he is or what the Cosmo Canyon Observatory is, if you're watching the VOD, there are going to be links in the comment section. And for those of you in the chat, you can probably find it there too. But as much as I would like to wax poetic about the accomplishments of Vyzzuvazadth and the Cosmo Canyon Observatory, I think it'd be better to let him do that. So, Viz, why don't you tell us who you are, what you've done, and what you're working on?
What I've done a lot. Welcome everybody. It's Vyzzuvazadth from the Cosmo Canyon Observatory, and today there's going to be a lot to discuss, for sure. I think I've been around, at least in the form of Cosmo Canyon Observatory, since 2019. Focus is very deep analysis, almost too deep, of everything. Back then it was trailers, and afterwards, after the game released, lots about the game, all the mysteries, predictions based on analysis, on evidence, based on supplemental material, original, just everything that's around. And it's a lot of work because those of you who watch Sleepy's videos, it probably does a little bit of more work going through all the compilation again and again and again. I don't have the time, so I make do with what I have, but work is no less high, piled up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for context, as detail oriented as Sleep Easy is, and so some of the connections he draws, while esoteric, are really driven in, like a solid understanding of the lore. The sort of spatial and engineer focused details that you have in your videos are sort of like, in my opinion, in the narrow field of Final Fantasy VII Remake lore crafting, the best in the biz. And so recently you released 2 videos about kind of the question that we're gonna mostly be talking about today, and those are some of my favorite videos you've ever done. The production quality is really good, but I just really enjoy the structure of your breakdowns. And so if you're listening and you haven't had a chance to watch Cosmo Canyon Observatory's material or join their Discord server or any of the stuff that they do for the greater Final Fantasy VII Remake community, please do. Please do. So, yeah.
Also, a few excerpts of how crazy it can get during trailer times, and especially the guard spoon, how it's also called.
Yes.
Scorpion Sentinel battle, the demo. I managed to map out the whole Mako reactor core layout, so the Mako storage.
Wow.
How where we enter, through which walkways and catwalks we walk through until we reach the bomb placement, and I was basically 100% correct in the end. Just based on all the camera angles in the battle and seeing the blurry catwalks and behind was so crazy, but it took a lot of time to map out everything.
One of the things that I remember is when the first intermission trailer came out,
right.
you were able to really determine where Yuffie was in the trailer, just based on very few shots, and the spatial stuff was really interesting. So I was beside myself. I was impressed that you were able to pick that up. And so I think there's a pretty clear reason why we're talking today, and a lot of people have brought this up, is that I think the biggest mystery of remake since remake came out is the this big elephant in the room question, and that's whether or not Zack is alive. And believe me, we will be talking about that. But we have not talked at all since intermission came out, and in fact, there's been it's been kind of dry for heavy lore information. But this last summer we got this 25th anniversary event, which there was a lot of buzz around, and we were really excited about. And I haven't really got a chance to talk to you since that came to be. And for those of you watching in the future, the 25th anniversary event, Crisis Core remaster remake project called Crisis Core Reunion was announced. The Ever Crisis chapter involving Sephiroth was revealed, and most importantly, we got our first little tease of Final Fantasy VII Remake sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as well as a variety of statements regarding that. And since then, there's been some interviews that have clarified what little they're willing to share about that project, etc. And so I have not got a chance to talk to Viz since that happened. So my first question for Viz is, what was your reaction to the 25th anniversary event and the developer interviews that followed?
It was a ride, definitely. We watched it live on a Cosmo Canyon Observatory Discord server in voice chat, those who wanted to. I think there was around 10 of us or something. And it went crazy, even though we were a little bit not quite in sync. Some saw it like 5 seconds later, so I reacted to something, and the other one said, "Hey, I'm not there yet." So yeah, that's classic internet problems. But
That's right.
It was so fun to watch, and also I did not expect Crisis Core to be a thing there. There was kind of a leak, let's say.
Yeah.
Or mumblings by some one Twitter user. But I thought, nah, why? Also, I'm kind of still of the opinion that it's a little bit that of a detriment for Cloud's arc to reveal it to everybody who will be playing Rebirth, because Crisis Core will be available on all platforms, and not just PS5.
Right.
So everybody will be able to experience it, and is probably more likely to experience it than the original game.
Yes. Yes.
So this is a concern. I also voiced my concern on our latest or 2 episodes ago on the Reunion podcast, where I'm also part of. And the developer said that it is apparently it's not really a problem, but I think we will get to that. But this is one concern I had. This is why I thought, nah, this is not going to happen. And then it happened, and I was like, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. Now that being said, is it a concern, or is it a clue as to
Both, probably?
as to the direction of Rebirth?
Yeah.
Well,
for sure.
So that was the Crisis Core reunion trailer was probably the biggest surprise, other than the fact that it was leaked early by a Twitter user who up to that point had a 100% success rate with leaking things. But the Ever Crisis chapter, sort of showed off that we were in fact getting this, Sephiroth backstory. And as excited about as I am, I'd say that the Rebirth trailer still, despite showing virtually nothing, was kind of the show stealer there. And we got developer statements along there that gave us sort of an outline, that this is something they're working really hard on. The idea too that this new journey was going to be comprehensive enough to meet all of our needs, etc. So, what were your what were your takeaways from the Rebirth trailer specifically?
So for one, it's basically confirmed the idea I had from the direction they're going in. It had both. It had the mystery that
Mm-hmm.
is just a continuation of the mystery presented in Remake, and a pretty faithful recreation of the original storyline. So the mix, and this got confirmed in the interviews as well. That's the fine line they want to thread between recreating the original experience, or at least the story, and whatever makes Final Fantasy,
Sure.
plus the new um, mysteries, so that it still feels fresh while being kind of the same. And I think this trailer encapsulates this perfectly, because it starts with seeing Zack dragging Cloud towards Midgar from above, and then the same scene without any cut um, ends the trailer again. So if you
Right.
match those two scenes at the beginning and the end together, it's seamless. There's basically no cut. It's just cut in the middle to introduce the Sephiroth and Cloud segments. So it's basically the core will remain, the axis or the crux will remain, but there's new mystery around it. So basically, this is what I got from the trailer.
The crux. Yes, the buzzword.
Yes.
The buzzword, the axis, the crux.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, though I don't necessarily. This isn't really like a is it good or bad thing
Nope.
type of discussion. I would argue that you could things like crux have a tendency to be very subjective. So one person's
Mm-hmm.
crux of the story of Final Fantasy VII might be different, and it was interesting for me to see that 50% of the trailer was what we expected, and 50% was something that had the potential to very much upend the the direction of the project in a way that makes it hard to argue that the crux will be the same. Also, some
Mm-hmm.
of the dialogue chosen and uh,
Oh yeah, dialogue.
the dialogue chosen, the translation of said and localization of said dialogue was interesting too. And the core questions being asked, what is real, what's Sephiroth's endgame, those things really highlighted that, to some, this is definitely not your grandpa's Final Fantasy VII. I,
Mm.
for one, am really excited for whatever is happening, but I do think that they have created this highly volatile and subjective interpretation. And for me, when I see that, when I saw it, I was like, okay, well, how's everybody going to respond to this? Are they going to feel like, uh, are they going to feel like the remake project is finally being honest about what it is, or will they feel more betrayed? And the answer seems to be that everybody that felt a certain way felt that way even stronger. And so I don't know what that means for the future of remake, but either way, I'm here for the journey. So, uh, moving forward with the conversation, I have watched your videos, and we've talked since remake's release, and uh, I think we've both had sort of gone on a journey of where we think things are going, how we're interpreting things. How has your opinion about the direction of remake changed since it's released in terms of what direction you think it's going? Not what is your objective opinion of its quality, but like I know you had kind of some ideas set about the way things were that have probably changed in the last 2 years. Can you talk about that?
Uh, I think the overall direction I thought they were going has not changed more like in detail, because I thought even back then when I played through Remake, well, first of all, it was okay. What they're going to do now? Pandora's box has been opened. But after deliberating a bit, I thought, well, it seems like they try to stay on course, but also not. Like, basically, not derail, but split the train of if this makes any sense, so that they can still stay on the same train rails,
Mm-hmm.
but also ride a different train rail at the same time. Is a bit
Sure.
weird of an analogy. I just came up right now with it.
It's good. It works.
Yes, but I don't think the general my general thoughts about Remake changed that much. Like the overall thought about it, about the direction.
Okay.
It's for me that's something that many people say that the 95% was basically the same, just expanded upon, portrayed a little bit differently, but it was still Final Fantasy in Midgar, Final Fantasy 7 Midgar.
Sure.
But the rest was really off the rails, completely in a different realm.
Mm-hmm.
With the whispers, with Sephiroth appearing already, and all those things. And I think they'll just keep doing this.
Yeah, where it'll maybe be 5% of the story in terms of pure narrative real estate. Like 5% of the time you're experiencing this new crazy
Completely
off the rail
different.
stuff.
Yes.
But the actual story value and impact of that 5% is like 50% of the overall core message and theme. I don't know if those numbers are really accurate, but I do know that 5% was pretty intense. It was a really intense 5%.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Although
argue that.
I have a feeling that the farther the story goes along, the more percent will deviate. Like
That's generally how deviation works. You know?
yes, it just becomes more and more. Although I think that the main direction still fits, and maybe we'll get a little bit more into it soon. But there's a high possibility or probability that the ending is not the same, that it ends completely
Ooh.
differently, or goes beyond Meteor Fall.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's an exciting take. Okay, so speaking of remake and part one, I think a lot of people that might be watching might not know this about how you conceptualize remake, but you say 95% is the same, but you're one of the few people that I think is committed directly to a concept that remake didn't actually happen in the same vague continuity as the OG. So can you and I know people that have watched all of your videos and didn't know that you believe this despite you saying it over and over in your videos. Can you briefly describe how you think the events of Remake connect to the original game? Just like an overview for our viewers that might not understand. You have some, you talk about some context, some terms that aren't even technically explicitly said during the OG, like the live stream, the negative live stream, stagnant live stream, Terra Corrupt. Those things are all this kind of vague sort of they're auxiliary terms that seem to describe what's happening in the main game. So can you explain the distinction between all that, where you think remake of like fits in that, just briefly?
To quote Sleepy, memories.
Okay.
Everything is a memory. And this is why why there's deviation, I think, because just picture it like this. You had a great experience, maybe we're on vacation somewhere 20 years ago, or something like that, or even 30 or 50, doesn't matter, or just 5. And later in your life, you remember it again. You think back, ponder a little bit. Oh, this was nice. This was a little bit weird. I hated that. I loved this dinner back then. This was a funny person I met. And you reminisce, or and but you probably won't remember it correctly, like not one to one. If you would think back and then watch a recording of everything, you would see differences.
Okay.
And this is basically how I interpret or how I see Remake being done, because there are so many details that completely differ from the original game. Not necessarily in terms of how it's going and how certain characters behave, but more likely what they say. Maybe they're not exactly in the same position and stuff like that. Just certain details just don't quite match up.
Okay.
And certain people know more, certain people appear where they shouldn't, but the main storyline's still the same. But then there are new characters that haven't appeared before. Just so there's just things that don't quite fit.
Sure.
That is a premise.
Okay.
And now, remember when Aerith looked up from the pipe with her eyes closed and then opened her eyes at the end of Remake? That she did the exact same at the start of Remake, at the end of OG, sorry, and then did the same at the start of Remake.
Right.
This is also a clue that it's not the exact same retelling, meaning it is a sequel. It happens actually in the timeline of the planet on the surface. In reality, it happens much, 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 much later.
Okay.
And whoever, let's say the planet, remembers back the time it happened, where this Midgar segment happened. It's in the Lifestream's memories, where we as the player see like through a window into the Midgar segment, see it unfold. But it is different because it's a memory. It's remembered by somebody or multiple people, probably.
Okay.
But then there are also, namely, two individuals who are in there in a form that they probably shouldn't, and with the ability to change things, namely Sephiroth and Aerith. Because Aerith knows more than she should. And in the original game, she was not able to see the future. She was able to listen to the planet and maybe get directions to where to go, but she didn't foresee or already know things that will happen in the future. So this is definitely new. It's not a retelling. For me, it's impossible to be just a retelling, just the same game, bigger, prettier, expanded upon.
So the basic premise is that Remake, so part 1,
yes,
occurs in memory. It doesn't occur in reality. It occurs in the memory of the planet. And what is that distinct from the Lifestream?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because memories are held in the Lifestream. Whenever, let's say, a human or even an animal dies, its essence returns to the planet and is then disseminated into the greater stream. And materia is also formed out of Lifestream, out of Mako, and contains knowledge of somebody. And then we can draw upon that knowledge and use the ability, let's say, fire or confuse or destruct or meteor. Well, or meteor, or comet, it is comet. Because meteor is something else. This is the black material, this is specific. But it's also the same concept.
Okay.
It's Lifestream is made up of memories, of life essence.
Right.
And it's as time goes on and that more life returns back to the planet, it enriches the greater stream of life with more and more and more knowledge.
Okay. So none of them are alive.
Not in that sense, technically.
Okay.
That's true.
All right. Okay.
It's there. We don't see people that are alive on the planet's surface, how we are alive here, or at least we perceive ourselves to be alive.
Sure.
And Cloud and the others also perceive themselves as alive because they're mere memories. If I play a game, the game is not, the world in the game is not real. It is just made up. It's fiction. But the characters in the game, they themselves probably think they're alive.
Okay. All right.
And this
So,
is also a good analogy for what Sephiroth and Aerith are doing. Kind of,
well, okay, we're in so just reductio ad absurdum here. So we're in the memories
yes.
of the planet, experiencing the OG, but through falsely remembered, or not falsely remembered, but vaguely inaccurate
Mm. Yeah,
recall. But we
probably.
have these two, we have these two, we have these two agents that seem to be have a layer of separation or awareness
Yes.
about the whole thing. So we've got Sephiroth, and one of the questions that Rebirth posed: what is Sephiroth's end game? So, what would you say Sephiroth's end game is here?
Oof, that's first off a lot of unknowns, but a lot of possibilities too. I have a video called Sephiroth's Endgame, which is around 4 hours and 40 minutes long. But it also contains a lot of Cloud's issues and
Mm-hmm.
memory glitches and stuff like that because so many things overlap. I originally wanted to make 2 videos, but there was so much overlaps that I had to just push it into one single video. And there, it's basically this premise that Sephiroth at 7 seconds before the end, which means before the end of the planet,
Mm-hmm.
before the planet reaches its end of the lifespan, he has no possibility of reaching his goal. He will perish with the planet because he's also a soul in the planet, a separate will. He has retained his will, unlike all the other dead souls that just are disseminated into the Lifestream and are not there anymore. He needs a backup plan. He needs to do something to not perish. So
Okay.
and with his possibility to roam the live stream and also his connection to Cloud, he managed to go back to a point in the memory where Cloud is starting his journey to start manipulating memories.
Mm-hmm.
To as I feel that he wants to change the makeup of this point in time, 7 seconds before the end,
Mm-hmm.
so that he has a new backup, a new thing that allows him to continue. So if he changes the memories, something in his presence will change.
That's a pretty solid reasoning. So conversely, that's the chaos side. What about the cosmos side? What do you think Aerith is doing? Does she have a grander plan? Does she does her awareness come directly from the planet, and is she just enacting planet's will until a certain thing happens? How does she fit into this?
So I don't think she really has an end game per se or a grand plan like Sephiroth.
Mm-hmm.
Sephiroth seems to have so much more knowledge and a multi-layered plan with backup plans because during the game itself, you see him trying to do different things, like trying to separate Cloud from the others, but he doesn't succeed, and then he needs to do it differently. He also seems to communicate to Cloud a little bit differently over time. At first, it's just taunting him, then he tries to kind of push him towards something.
Mm-hmm.
And Aerith doesn't seem to do this. She seems like to act in the moment, to like try to do her best in the moment where it occurs. She doesn't
She's more reactive.
more reactive exactly, but
Yeah.
I feel she as a Cetra also being part of the live stream, but with her consciousness intact, as
Mm-hmm.
detailed by the Livestream White chapters
Mm-hmm.
in On the Way to Smite, because Livestream White, Lies and Black chapters are so crucial to all this theory crafting. A lot of information is in there.
Sure.
that she's always a few steps behind Sephiroth. She notices and learns what he wants to do in Advent Children with the
Mm-hmm.
remnants and spreading geostigma and all the rest. And she needs to react to that. And this is no different in Remake. But she's also fighting against Whispers because they don't want change. And she, in her inexperience to deal
Mm-hmm.
with this whole thing, changes things. Because if you remember in chapter 8, she blurts out that Cloud is a mercenary and stuff like that, even though she has no possibility to know that
Mm-hmm.
without future knowledge. And I don't think this was deliberate. It was an accident. She's not as back then in chapter 8, not as versed in this whole memory travel and not making her true self known, basically.
So does the memories of the planet
Mm.
that we are experiencing, do they have agency?
I don't think so. It's
So
just
so the what is the
well, kinda
okay, all right.
depends. This is
Depends
where the
on who?
whispers come in.
Right. So okay, let's ask. So how do the whispers fit in? If the whispers seem to be, we'll call them omnitemporal, they're everywhere.
Yes.
That includes
Yeah.
inside the live stream, right? So what
Yes.
what is their role inside the live stream?
Uh, as far as I can see it, they're basically memory police to make
Okay.
sure that things happen as they should, because it's everything already happened. That's why they're memories. And if agents that are able to change those memories come forth and start to change things, that unforeseen events will happen. Nobody knows what will happen if memories change. So that they want to retain the integrity of the planet, of the live stream. Sleepy says there's Genova involved. I haven't really thought about that to the extent, but we can get back to that later. They're basically just also souls from the live stream. That's why they cry in
Uh-huh.
chapter 18, the cries of the planet, that has been a concept in original, in Dirge of Cerberus. I think only in those two where they explicitly mentioned cries of the planet. So in my opinion, those are souls appointed to policing the flow of the memory, making sure that it stays intact. And I like to do this analogy with the singularity. Like, singularity is either a command center or even a library. Like, the whispers are librarians, or let's say the one that controls the whispers is a librarian, or is in a control center, clicking all the buttons and turning knobs, making sure that everything is all right. And the memories in the live stream are basically inside a virtual reality, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. It's
Okay.
just different to whoever is sitting behind the controls. Let's say the planet.
Okay. So
Um,
we are so the concept being that so the whispers or the
mhm.
feelers are
Yes.
souls of the dead within
Yes.
a realm of no longer alive souls that don't know they're not alive, or just within the memory of the planet. So it's more of a, this is just they're just like quality control agents within the computer that is the central brain of the planet.
Yes. Basically, white blood cells.
Okay. So
Yes. They're part of the body. They maybe are aware of their own purpose, but not really much beyond. I think a body system is also a good analogy. That the brain, the singularity is basically the brain, or the consciousness in the brain, and everything else is the planet, and the memories are live stream, but also the blood is the live stream, and just yes, I haven't thought this through. Sometimes I just make analogies up on the spot, but
and it's hard to make analogies too, especially with
it
something
is,
that's
because
never
it's
been
never
explored.
accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
okay.
I think the best analogy is it's just the control room. There's somebody,
Yeah.
some entity, let's say the Whisper Harbinger,
Mhm.
is in there, has control over everything, and sends out the feelers or the whispers into the system, live stream, or your computer, whatever, to make sure that that's nothing's been changed. Kind of like an antivirus program or something, or anti-hacker software, what have you.
Sure,
And
sure.
Sephiroth is the hacker.
Okay. Okay. So the Whispers have been defeated now. They've been destroyed in
Yes.
some sense. There's been some adjustment. So these agents of the memories of the planet have now been destroyed. What does this mean for the future of the planet? Are we still in Rebirth in just a version of the memories of the planet that is now an unchecked simulation?
Basically, yeah.
So
I think an unchecked simulation hits it right on the head. But there is just this one thing I'm still not quite sure. In the analysis video about Aerith's secret, I proposed that the actual surface of the planet is being reformed to match the new memories now. But I don't think this quite makes sense in this way. So I think it. I also said this in one of the newer videos, that the unknown journey we're going to go through now in the upcoming 2 games.
okay.
And that's basically the ripple effect that reaches then to the present, that we're experiencing what like the changes that Sephiroth wanted to do. Like the planet solving the paradoxes to adjust to the changed memories, that there's something changes then, maybe also changes on the surface back then,
Okay.
shortly before its demise, but we are going through the journey of the memories changing,
So
like the unchecked simulation towards the end of the simulation.
So does this and will this have any impact on reality?
Probably.
Okay.
But to the extent I can't really say. This is something I'm still unsure of.
Okay.
But there's one thing, and this is part of what I believe Sephiroth's end game is. He wants that Omega weapon to leave the planet and survive. His
But
planet is
does he want
to
that,
die.
or does he want the memory of that?
He wants the planet to remember that Omega weapon is still there and
Right.
ready to be deployed. Because this also, I don't think this is completely spelled out yet, that whether the Omega weapon in Dirge of Cerberus was the real one destroyed, or if it was kind of a fake one summoned forth by the fake summoning. But this is a whole other
That is
can
a
of worms.
big discussion. You're right. That
Yes.
is a big one. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of controversy surrounding that.
Yeah.
So,
But let's just say Omega does not exist anymore, has been defeated, like Diamond Weapon and Emerald, Ruby, Ultima, and whatever weapon, Sapphire Weapon, all defeated. Though the planet may be able to recreate those, but I have a feeling that at the end of the planet's lifespan, the remaining essence needed to create those has diminished to a point that it's no longer able to conjure new weapons, because so much has already stagnated or corrupted. by Genova and general stagnation. That's why what I think that Sephiroth is after to change things.
Mm-hmm.
That the planet is able to craft this weapon again to then send the Lifestream back into the universe with him on board, of course, with Sephiroth on board, so that he can persist in perpetuity, become life itself, so to speak.
Okay.
Become God over the cycle of life. That's kind of a mixture between what he wanted in the original game and in Advent Children.
Okay, so before I get into a really heavy question, if this is for lack of a better analogy, simulation, or if it is occurring outside of, we'll say, consequential objective happenings, right? So this stuff isn't really happening per se, it's just being remembered, and there's an argument that those things have equal value, but from a storytelling perspective, the world won't see it that way. If this is all a dream, that we'll just say I've never seen this is all a dream plot twist ever be well received in the history of time. So let's
for sure, yeah.
So let's
but
just.
I don't think that's what's happening.
Okay, so let's say that Remake was memory. Do we think that the story moving forward, once the Whispers have been destroyed, do you think moving forward we will see things that have actual consequence to the characters that we've grown to know and love?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's a I don't think this, whether it's a memory being changed or if reality is being changed, I don't think it matters from a storytelling perspective, because there are no ancients that can undo any further change. It has unlocked now. There are no Whispers or no Harbinger that can just go into the system and correct those changes. This was the entire point of Remake, to undo this force of nature, so to speak, that's able to change. So whether it's just memory or it's reality, I think this blurs together, because it can just flow wherever. There's whatever happens now happens for good.
Okay. I think that almost everybody can agree that regardless of what happened in part 1, the expositional purpose of the Whisper's defeat is to let us know that it's forever now. Whatever happens is permanent, right? So there's real consequences now.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, though, do you have a response to the recent interviews that suggest that quite literally Final Fantasy VII Remake does fit into the same time within the compilation as the original did? And that's been a source of vagueness, partially because of badly translated interviews, that it wasn't part of the compilation, but
yeah,
Kitase on numerous occasions basically said, well, Dirge is a sequel to this, meaning both Remake and OG, and Crisis Core is a prequel to both Remake and OG. Did that do anything to your concept that perhaps this isn't a simulation of Remake occurring, or of the OG occurring, but just the way that the OG occurred now?
First off, I don't think they actually said that Dirge of Cerberus is specifically a sequel to Remake, just that the events happen later, because also the thing is, they don't want to reveal the mystery yet, so they can't say,
Sure,
"Oh,
sure.
Dirge of Cerberus is not a sequel." It just happens later. It happens after the Final Fantasy VII's point in time or something
Right,
like that.
right.
Yeah. But I think this is more like, okay, it happens later. But with Crisis Core, they specifically said in multiple interviews that it fits or is a prequel to original and remake. Even though remake makes you feel uneasy when you see a difference between Zack's fate there and Zack's fate in Reunion.
Right.
So, and also he specifically says that the past has not changed. That's why it's still pertinent to both. It's still it's a prequel to both, which
Right.
makes sense. Which also fits into the theory that everything that happened before Cloud seized the feather in chapter 1 has still the same. Nothing before it has actually changed per se. So the story or the memory only starts to diverge when Cloud sees the feather, instead of hearing "Watch out! This isn't just a reactor," and then Sephiroth appearing and all the other shenanigans. I think that's the point where it diverts, where it remake starts to differ from the original game in terms of storytelling.
Sure.
So that's why Crisis Core Reunion is still the same. They won't change anything, not add any missions. This just one for one, just prettier, replaced models and textures and remodeled surroundings and stuff like that. But the content still seems to be exactly the same.
Right, because and what they've continually said in interviews is that it's necessary that that people understand what happened in Crisis Core.
Yeah.
To understand why the difference is important. So okay, let's get to that. So let's talk about that little doggy. Let's talk about
doggy.
Let's talk about Stamp. Okay, so in the remake continuity, whatever, however you need to conceptualize that, within the memories of the planet during a remake, Stamp, the mascot for Shinra, who was sketched, by the way, by Palmer.
Apparently, to a rumor.
Yeah, it's rumored.
It's rumored.
Rumored by Toriyama, who I'm sure would just make up a completely bogus rumor. He said sarcastically that was drawn by Palmer because he got bummed out about the space program getting defunded, cutbacks.
I have questions about the timeline, but go on.
Well, you're asking the wrong guy. We'll get Toriyama on, and you can ask him. So that is a lovable beagle in every instance that we see in remake. In every instance that we see in the First Soldier, which First Soldier's canonicity and relevance is pretty meaningless. And Stamp's first mention was in the Final Fantasy 30th anniversary event in 2018, and it was this one-off line during Aerith's farewell speech. This is Stamp, you're gone too. And nobody knew what that was about when that came out. Like, who's Stamp? People thought it was Angeal, maybe. But there's this whole character of Stamp that's been added to remake, and it's a big part of remake. It occurs in the Beagle occurs in both base game remake and in episode intermission from the perspective of Yuffie. Beagle. We see one instance of the Terrier, and this Terrier shows up during Zack's last stand. What does each of these breeds represent to you? And why are they different?
Yeah, this is another can of worms. A really a special one to me, because I've researched this a lot from a layman's perspective, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I could be wrong about the dog breeds and stuff like that. But I think the main takeaway is that that the place or location Zack is
Mm-hmm.
the one that survived or seemingly survived, or that we perceive as survived, and he perceives himself as being alive after his last stand.
But to be clear, they're all still dead
Yeah,
because it's all the memories of the live stream. Okay, go on. Sorry.
yeah, basically.
Okay.
It's that we see him survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only place where we see the terrier stamp. Everywhere else is Spiegel.
Okay.
So this tells me that the continuity for Cloud is Beagle,
Mm-hmm.
and this news, whatever that continuity is with Zack being alive
Mm-hmm.
or having survived his last stand, is Terrier continuity. So this is also one thing that I changed my opinion on. I think the first time I've been on, where we went on for about 4 hours or something, there you also asked me, what do we see in Calm?
Mm-hmm.
Terrier or Beagle? And I think I said Terrier back then. I'm pretty sure I remember correctly.
No, you said if they show a terrier, it means that they've really gone off the rails.
Or that could be.
Yes.
See, memories.
Right.
You don't remember everything accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Things can change. Oh, basically, just on a side note, this is also something I brought up in still, I think, second to last video.
Mm-hmm.
That even if you're still physically the same, things will be different if somebody changes your memories. Like if somebody brainwashes you, for example, and thinks, okay, this person has not died, your mother is still alive, even though she isn't, for example, you will be different. Or if you don't remember certain people you met or certain events differently or not at all, then you will be different. Your being, or like your consciousness, your entire makeup in how you perceive yourself will be different. Maybe you just start wearing different clothes, start a different routine because you remember things differently. Or maybe you remember being somebody completely else. This is also a good analogy for memories changing, and then also the physical world being affected by it. Meaning the end of the world. So that Sephiroth can do something differently there. Just as an aside.
Sure.
All right, back to Terrier and Beagle. So for me, there's, I think this is the huge elephant we're going to address now with Terrier and Beagle, because this is a thing that I think many fans are hung up on, myself included, yourself included.
Yeah.
Is Zack in the same continuity as Cloud now, alive, or is he in a different continuity for whatever reason? Is he still dead? Well, basically, as we established, technically nobody's alive, but let's just say for the purposes of storytelling, since we see them walking around, they are alive in their own reality. Because otherwise it won't make much sense to talk about it. They're now both there, but in the crossing, it specifically shows that Zack carrying Cloud does not exist in the same space as the others. Aerith and Cloud standing on the cliff with Barrett, Red 13, and Aerith and Tifa. Sorry.
Well, place and time is the exact translation.
Yeah, space and time, or place and time.
Place.
Yeah.
Place.
It says, yeah.
I know that seems arbitrary, but believe me, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it.
I think it would be arbitrary to the way that both you and I conceptualize the issue, but a lot of people have got hung up on the space thing.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, because I think space could mean same time, same continuity, same universe, same reality, but somewhere else.
Sure.
Space. It's just spatial.
Yeah.
but the another place could definitely be a different realm.
Okay.
Could be anything. I think that's what people are hung up on.
Yes,
But
yes.
as I see it, I also bring this up in the video that there's a whiteout going on there between Zack Cloud and Aerith Cloud, which don't see each other there in the crossing at the
Right.
end.
Right. And
And this
so
whiteout is always shown where memories connect that are not in the same space or place and time. For
right.
example, past Cloud, true Cloud talking to present fake Cloud or present soldier
Mhm.
Cloud. Aerith talking to Cloud in Advent Children, Zack talking to Cloud in their Advent Children, and stuff like that. And this is also a tiny hole I had in my thoughts and my theories that SleepPC fixed for me with his video that I only watched yesterday or 2 days ago. The Everything is a Memory. That this is not just a connection between, it's not just memories talking to each other, it's actually a connection being built. Like Aerith talking to Cloud might not necessarily be the actual Aerith in conscious in the live stream talking to Cloud, but could also be the essence of Aerith that is within Cloud, within his memories, within himself. That's the connection they built. That
Mm.
she's talking, like Zack as well, because Zack is dead. He's not a separate conscious entity like Aerith is, or like all the Cetrus are, like Sephiroth is. But he can still talk to Cloud. That's also something I wasn't quite sure about. But if you conceptualize this as the people that are connected to Cloud intrinsically by his experience and what make him him. Like without Zack, he is not Cloud. Without the experience with Aerith, he is not Cloud. And they're so
Sure.
connected to Cloud. Kind of like what, well, no, I won't say with this about Kingdom Hearts because it's a spoiler for those who haven't played it. But that's how how Zack can appear in Cloud's consciousness. It's the connection that Cloud made to Zack. It's not actually Zack's consciousness in the live stream reaching out to Cloud. It's more like the connection they formed, the memories formed that Cloud can draw from, basically. Kind of like his past self, his true self, the boy that wanted to become a soldier because of Sephiroth, talking to Cloud when he falls from Reactor 5
Okay.
towards the slums.
So
It's kind of this thing.
so what does the terrier stamp mean?
Yeah, the terrier means is since Zack is in a different place and time, the terrier is too. And for me, the terrier represents Zack's place and time, which is not the same as Cloud's place and time.
Sure. Okay.
That's it's for me. It's mostly symbolic. It's not. I tried to explain it for myself. Even I also mentioned this in the video that maybe something changed in the past more than 15 years ago, because we see Beagle Stamp in Aerith's untouched
Mhm.
room. That the terrier is now a terrier, but that this would mean that it's a terrier moving forward, which I don't believe it is. I could be wrong, but it's what I currently believe. Because then you have to make so many assumptions, which are based on just speculation, basically, because you don't really know what changed. Was Sephiroth able to change the past even further back because he was wielding the whispers in the final battle,
Mhm.
stuff like that, and this just leads down a road where it's hard to really come to a conclusion that fits into everything. But if you conceptualize Zack's survival as being created either by the planet or Sephiroth through the whispers, which
Mhm.
has kind of a, yeah, let's say branched reality, and I'll to stay in lore is negative and positive live stream. That Zack is now as a, I think similar to Aerith being a conscious entity now there, being summoned, kind of being summoned there in the negative live stream, in this negative reality, which is separate from the positive. And that this negative Lifestream concept comes from a comment that Nomura made, I think, in terms of Advent Children's, that the strands that Sephiroth summons in Advent Children when their fight starts, this is the negative Lifestream, the black gooey thing, basically made up of geostigma. And we also see this in the cinematic before battling Sephiroth, where he absorbs meteor. It's the same gooey strands. Then it makes sense. It's two different and separate realities. They don't mesh. It's a corrupted part and still the remaining pure part, the normal cycle of life that can recycle life, can birth new life and get back life back into. But there's the negative Lifestream, and I'm not sure if it's the same as the stagnant Lifestream, which is a concept from the Cerberus. It could be a little bit different. Negative is probably specifically corrupted by Genoa cells and Sephiroth's will and hatred and all the hatred that he spreads with geostigma and stuff like that. And the stagnant could just be normal stagnating life, just life that cannot be recycled anymore. For example, or in our body, cancer cells. Basically, it's just cells that do something they shouldn't, and if they go overboard, we get problems. But if the body's healthy enough, they can combat it, which is what the proto materia basically does. It filters out the stagnant Lifestream, keeps it at bay, so that to prolong the planet's life. And were it to be removed, then yeah,
right. It's part of it, despite its negativity. It's part of the delicate ecosystem of
ecosystem balance, exactly.
Yeah. So
okay, so but it is not in this life recycle system. So it's parallel. And if Zack's essence resides in the negative Lifestream or the stagnant Lifestream, and Cloud and the rest are still in the normal cycle of life, normal memories, then you can also explain why there are so many sad and people in despair in the church when Zack enters, which don't notice him at all. It's so disconnected. It's like he bursts in there loudly, noisy, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody. As if he doesn't really belong there. It's not really connected there. And if this is the negative Lifestream, the stagnant one, that there's just this despair and hatred, negative emotions, and cannot be disseminated back into the normal cycle of life. It's just basically the trash or the garbage, the sewage or stuff that cannot be recycled anymore.
It's the despair.
It's despair, the remnants, this thing that cannot be used anymore. It's just stagnant, as the word already says. It's stagnant. It's there. It doesn't move forward. It's just in a state of perpetual whatever, sadness, despair.
So you think that the Terrier bag is an indication that the planet has a negative Lifestream where things are the same but primarily despair focused, but for whatever reason in that particular continuity or memory of the planet, the stamp logo is a happy-go-lucky terrier instead of a beagle?
Because he represents Zack, the terrier. And Zack is still a happy-go-lucky guy.
Okay, so you really think that that's just symbolic?
Yes. Okay. The terrier specifically is symbolic. It symbolizes Zack. It's still the same. Like, it's still the same. The chip bag, it says original. Stamps,
it says exactly gems. The same thing.
Everything is exactly the same. Just the terrier, the mascot is different. So the world is still the same, basically. But it's Zack, the protagonist, in there. And in Cloud's reality, it's Cloud, who's the protagonist there.
Okay.
It's basically it's based on the same yeah, memory, let's say that, or the same past. It's based on the same past.
But the collective memory of everybody there remembers a terrier instead of a beagle. But they remember all the
Maybe.
other words exactly the same and the exact color patterns, etc.
Well, that's that's a thing. If you need to have everybody remember that, or if it
You're right.
even
We don't know.
matters.
We don't actually know the mechanic. Like we don't know who the
Yeah,
narrator is. Like
yeah.
whose memory it is. Like we're talking about it like it's
Hmm.
the planet's memory. And so
I can
yeah.
also see that the cycle of life just keeps going, and but I think this is also something I posted in the Sephiroth's Endgame video, that everybody who dies
Mm-hmm.
then goes into the as everybody else into the live stream. However, since planet is already basically dead and has
Mm-hmm.
this sliver of still functioning ecosystem, and the rest already corrupted and stagnating, that everything that dies or in this memory dies goes over to the negative live stream and stays there. So it cannot. It's the recycle just doesn't work anymore. It cannot create a new. It just can give away by something dying. It just keeps diminishing the essence that gives life, because it just diminishes because everything goes into the corrupted and stagnant part. That's
Mm-hmm.
why the planet is dying in 7 seconds before the end, because otherwise it wouldn't kind of make sense that the planet is dying. It only dies when everything is stagnated, when there's nothing left. It's just a mass or lump of something, and then just withers away.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also, I think, Sleepy brought that up in the talk with you, which I watched maybe 12 hours ago or something.
Okay.
Not even. It's why it's fresh in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that death it has more permanence now, even more so than in the original, because in the original game, or just in the original continuity, when somebody dies,
Mm-hmm.
the physical form dies, but the memories remain, and the memories is go back into the live stream. Maybe they linger there a bit and then get disseminated, and but they are still remembered. But now it's even worse. It's They're not even in the cycle of life anymore. They're basically in some sort of purgatory, limbo, whatever you want to call this. Just a place where it's a dead end, basically.
But that is distinct from the current dead end that the
It's not quite
beagle.
dead end, because in the normal lifetime cycle of life, every soul can be
Okay.
reborn again in a different form. Also, like I don't remember which culture. I think multiple cultures have this idea that your soul keeps on going. When you die, your soul as a thing goes
Okay.
back to the planet, is
Right.
then reborn into a new animal, person, whatever, and then you gain more and more
So
experience and
reincarnation. Yeah. Yeah.
reincarnation, exactly, and then you reach nirvana at the end, when
Okay.
there's your soul reaches the end of its journey through all those different bodies. And this can happen when the live stream still functions, but now, since the planet is about to die, this is not possible anymore.
Okay.
Reincarnation has basically been eliminated at some point in time.
Okay. So what what does I mean obviously we have a deviation in the way that things occur
Yeah.
in I suppose the negative life stream. So
Yeah.
what does Zack's victory and his new fate entail? And like for instance, we know that there's a deviation of some form, right? So we
Mm.
see we see that there's a direct contrast between the ending of Crisis Core. You know, we've
Mm.
got the feather come down,
Yes.
representative of Evangel, and then the white light comes. Zack accepts his fate. The wings .jpg, everything, and it's this seemingly happy ending and like an element of closure. And in the Rebirth trailer, which just directly continues from the ending of Remake, the feather comes down. It misses Zack. Zack is walking in the negative Lifestream, supposedly, with Cloud. Or is that a simulation of Cloud? Or is it just meaningless?
I believe it's just basically an image made up from Zack's memories, because he remembers traveling with Cloud there, battling it out, and then going back with Cloud, because Cloud is out of it. He doesn't say anything, so it could just very well be that Zack remembers Cloud, just carries Cloud towards Midgar, and then drops him off somewhere, and then he basically just stays there or disappears. Whatever, it's hard to say what actually happens. But it's definitely not Cloud as such, because we know Cloud exists very much alive with Boss's Sword, with the same past, same memories gathered throughout Remake with the others, walking and driving towards Calm. So it cannot be the same Cloud, which is also why I think Aerith does not exist in the space or place Zack is in. That's why she's not in a church, and there's so much sadness and despair and agony going around, because there's no Aerith to soothe them.
So in the lore, is there any precedent for Cloud existing in that universe?
In Zack's universe?
In Zack's continuity, we'll say. Like, if it's possible that he is just generating a memory of Cloud, why, when he opens the church, has he not generated a memory of, say, Aerith?
Well, the idea is that Zack, when he was supposed to die but lived and made the transition, that Cloud was still there in his purview, or in his current continuity, basically. He traveled with him there, fought, and Cloud was still there hanging around behind one of the boulders or something. So it's still within Zack is still in this state that he traveled there with Cloud and needs to go to Midgar with Cloud. But whether Aerith is at the church, at her mom's, or Gaia knows, whatever, Zack doesn't know. So he just goes everywhere and doesn't see her, let's say that. And I don't think Zack can do much by that point. He just has this renewed existence, whatever that is, and needs to learn on his journey what he is, where he is, what he can or cannot do. And that's it. It was just for fun and just pure speculation. But I had this small fragment in my video that where I said that Zack could encounter dead people like Jesse, Dyne, President Shinra, Scarlet and Heidegger, after they're blown up inside of Proud Cloud or Pride and Joy. Because he will, since he's traveling this stagnant part of life where death is now permanent, no reincarnation. That everything that dies, wherever that is, will be in his realm, so to speak.
Yeah.
So Ifalna could also be there because she was already dead. Basically, it could be Bugenhagen could end up there and serve as a guide, something like that. But this is just pure conjecture. Just some nice what if.
Right. I mean,
just based on conclusions before, just what can happen now.
Right, right. Just assumptions. But
Yes,
right,
definitely.
right. So okay, now clearly this mystery has been set up.
Mm.
Um and one of the things that we do know is that Zack is going to be a big part of the story moving forward.
Yes.
And so the speculation has been for a long time, is his role going to be a something that is absolutely inconsequential to the
Mm.
main story, or or will it be consequential only in a meta sense, like while he's battling whatever weird, time demons have occurred as a result of whatever future Sephiroth has done, while Cloud and Co move forward exactly, and then he reunites with post death Aerith, and they team up and go on undead adventures together through the live stream, or is it going to ultimately result in some kind of narrative payoff that changes the ultimate direction? And the nobody has answered that when asked. Like the
Mm.
devs are really, really like, hey, it's new mystery, can't talk about it. Don't worry, the crux is the same, but we're not going to tell you what the crux means, etc. So, with that being said, one of the things that was said recently in the French interview was
Mhm.
Tetsuya Nomura described that the relationship between Cloud and Zack has been modified.
Mhm.
What do you think that means?
After watching Sleepy Says Everything is Memory video, it makes a little bit more sense now because this is again the concept of connection between those people that make up one's being. The connections I've made make what I am now, and Second Aerith and Sephiroth too are so consequential to how and Tifa too, of course, uh, are who Cloud is. And if it's changed, this could only mean that Sleepy's is onto something there, with Zack's connection to Cloud being now severed. Like, of course, Cloud remembers that, or subconsciously remembers Zack, and still thinks he is the stand-in for Zack. Still the same mannerisms. Um, he remembers things that Zack did or would do. His personality is a little bit more towards how he thinks a soldier mercenary is, how Zack um, would present himself in that manner, which is also said or written in the script annotations when he gives Tifa the flower. That
Mm-hmm.
he does that because he thinks subconsciously that this is something Zack would do, and there's so many other instances. This has not changed. Like, the memory is there, but the actual not meta, but the connections made by strands of life or whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
that is severed. The Zack, basically Zack cannot appear to Cloud anymore as he did in Advent Children, for example.
Okay.
So stuff like that, and this could also give more credence to the separation between the stagnant or negative live stream and the rest. That there's no connection between that anymore.
Okay. And
Because
so
in Advent
that's
Children,
different.
yeah, and in Advent Children, it's still there's still the reality and the live stream, and both are connected through the cycle of life and the souls and memories. It's still a functioning system.
Uh-huh.
So that's where the connection is still there. But when something is some essence, something is in the negative stagnant live stream or stagnant part, it's separated from the rest. So for that, in my mind, it still fits into this whole thing. And to elaborate on that interview, um, it could mean that some events might play out a little bit differently
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
a second Cloud.
Yeah, definitely. Like for instance, let's say survived and carried Cloud to Midgar. That'd be a little
Mhm.
different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually in the story that is something entirely different happening. It's more like the portrayal of Zack and Cloud in the upcoming games. They're a little bit different, and maybe even the Tifa's and Cloud's time in the live stream where she puts him back together, his consciousness back together. This might also play out a little bit differently or feel different, is portrayed differently. Because that's also a thing that I don't remember which one it was. Was it a German or a Spanish interviewer who asked, since they will release Crisis Core Reunion before Rebirth and even before the third part, where they will resolve or show the Cloud's arc, the mystery around Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
that he wasn't a soldier and stuff like that. Isn't there a problem that they show it now, this winter, that people already know the twist or the revelation of Cloud's true past? And I don't remember the exact words, but basically Kitase wasn't that much bothered about that
No, he
because
was
it's
not.
because
Yeah.
remake is different in a sense, or that there are new mysteries now.
Sure.
Also, for us people, or us hardcore fans who know everything, we already know everything. So it isn't a twist anymore anyway. But they will still want to provide a new mysteries, a new experience. So them releasing Crisis Core before the rest just brings the others who haven't played the original game yet up to speed with us. So it still has to work with both, with us and the others. That's also why they didn't want to just remake it 1-to-1, because then it would just be prettier and not really be much of a mystery, or just wouldn't have warranted to create such a project in the first place. So they want to create a new mysteries around it to surprise us, to provide a new experience for us and those who haven't played it before. And if they know who Cloud really was, it doesn't quite matter. That's the feeling I got from reading that interview. Which means that the new mysteries could also extend to Cloud's story and Zack's story. Well, they will, of course, but there probably will be more going on there. Besides just, oh, Cloud wasn't in Soldier. Ta-da! Surprise.
Right. One
I
of the
think that,
lines of dialogue insinuates that Cloud is consciously remembering that Zack
yes,
exists.
yes.
And I think you probably have heard that my where I think that most likely occurs is in Junon, because
Oh, right.
yeah.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
And
I disagree, but I'm open to it.
where do you think it would occur? Nibelheim?
The Nibelheim conjured up by Sephiroth to show Cloud the truth, or part of the truth.
Oh,
Then,
go on.
whereas, yes,
Go
it's
on to what
it
okay.
would be more in line with the original, would be so much of a curveball, but in the original, Cloud just seemed okay. It's a different guy there on the photo. Yeah, I don't care. It's just an image made up by Sephiroth. It's fine. And then he starts breaking down, of course, but he does not remember Zack's name, anything about him there. But in remake, it could be that he remembers so much more then, and then some things start becoming weird because Zack is now disconnected from him. His essence is not in their continuity anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
they could play around with that a little bit.
Right.
The Cloud breaks down not just because he cannot remember how he entered Soldier, but
Uh-huh.
also because he remembers stuff about Zack, and things start to unravel there already. Not to the extent that we see then in the livestream segment with Tifa in the third game, but
So okay, but I want to clarify. So the line I'm talking about
yes.
is he says, "You were here with me 5 years ago."
Yes. And the Japanese version says, 5 years ago we came here together, didn't we? Zack, where are you?
Yeah.
Translation by Turkish Hammer.
Yes. Yeah. So. Yeah, and Turquoise Hammer, I think, by the way, is the one that suggested Junon for the first time to me.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So credit to Turquoise Hammer. Please follow Turquoise Hammer on Twitter. He's doing a lot of work on translations.
Yes, definitely. It's good work.
So either would be fine with me. We came here together. Does sound like Nibelheim. But
yes.
It could also count for Junon too.
I don't vividly remember the point in the compilation where they did travel together to Junon.
Is in the Junon segment of Crisis Core.
Was Cloud there as well? Okay.
No, that line doesn't mean Zack is right in front of Cloud. No, and that's not what we're saying.
I
so
see.
What we're suggesting is that he sees something that makes him remember.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So but it would be a good time to start developing that mystery. But Nibelheim would be a big one too. But it would be weird to me that after the Nibelheim incident, right? So the game obviously is going to start with the Nibelheim incident. That's shown off. For him to tell that entire story, from this fabricated perspective, and then go to Nibelheim and say, "You were here with me 5 years ago." It seems like that would have come up, and I do think that there will be hints of inconsistency. It makes sense for them to show hints of an unreliable narrator during the Nibelheim incident, or during the Nibelheim retelling. But
to be clear, I mean the Nibelheim that Sephiroth conjures up in the Whirlwind Maze, where he shows Cloud the photo with Zack. Not when they first go to Nibelheim and oh wait, it's not burned down. What happened? I don't think it's being said there.
Sure. Yeah. That would also
Could
work.
be, but
that would work. Yeah.
It's really hard to say, and I'm open to all suggestions. But in my mind, to not have the original narrative and the crux or axis break down too early. I think this the Whirlwind Maze is the best place to introduce this line where Cloud actually remembers Zack and the name.
Sure, yeah.
Not before.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it could happen either way.
Yeah, and I do think we'll start seeing more gradual breakdown. I think that this time we're going to see a lot more of the mysteries being spread evenly throughout the game, as opposed to
more deviations in general.
Yeah, and I think
which is basically confirmed by them saying, "Oh, you won't go through all the locations in the same order. Some will be changed around a bit to fit the trilogy structure." Sure. Not quite sure if they are already talking about Rebirth, maybe, but I'm pretty sure that in the last game they will switch around things a lot, and it's much easier there because we have if it ends at the Whirlwind Maze and starts at Junon's execution in the third game, then it's basically a quote unquote open world, or at least we can go anywhere with the high wind right from the start. So they can just switch around things however they want.
Sure.
But it could also just mean, okay, Wutai won't be accessible after Rocket Town, or we will reach Gongaga not between Cosmo Canyon and Gold Saucer, but maybe after Rocket Town, or even only after the Temple of the Ancient without Aerith. All those things. It's maybe, or just Fort Condor not even being much of a place in Rebirth, but only in the third. I don't think it means any much more besides that, because if you go through the whole line on the world map where they go through it, I don't think switching up too much makes sense. For example, visiting Bone Village after Aerith's death and stuff like that. It's just in the continuity and even logistically, it doesn't make much sense. That's a bit of a side comment.
I for the most part agree too. I don't imagine they yeah. But I mean that brings us to that's a good segue to our next question, which is like, how do you foresee the end of Rebirth playing out? And where do you think it'll end? What do you think the final struggle or villain will be?
Yeah, that's mostly speculation, but I see the whole Whirlwind Maze and Sephiroth receiving the black materia and summoning Meteor or something like that. Maybe it changes up a little bit. But this is the end game or last chapter in Rebirth, I feel. Because Sephiroth is reborn then, even in the original game. He is encased in Mako Crystal, but then receives the black materia and then starts rumbling and stuff happens, and he's kind of reborn, summons Meteor, and then just waits for Meteor to hit, basically, to absorb all the Lifestream that will come rushing to heal the planet. So that matches the title at least. Yeah, there are so many other things that could pertain to Rebirth. It's probably also saying something about Zack being reborn. Rebirth of
rebirth into like entity. The negative Lifestream.
Yeah,
into death.
This
reborn into death.
Yeah, he's basically the only one that is being reborn there, because birth doesn't mean anything there anymore. And there's also still the question, who did it? Did Sephiroth do it? Did Genoa do it? Did the planet do it? Who's responsible for Zack's Zack winning his last stand?
Did Aerith do it?
Did Aerith do it? But I don't think so, because she doesn't wield the whispers. Which are present in Zack's last stand, by the way.
As are the gold flecks, which first appear when Aerith casts her bath bomb on the Whisper Dome. Yeah. I personally think that the connection between Zack's new fate and Aerith is fairly strong. Personally, yeah, the yellow sparkle magic is like holy magic. What do you think Aerith did when she did that?
Yeah, this is also a question I'm not 100% set on, but I settled at least to something. And since she's able to impart memories of herself, this is also a concept brought up in the Lifestream White, that she can imbue souls with her memories, so that those souls can then help her get rid of the anger and rage that's going on thanks to Geostigma. She does this unconsciously to Cloud in Chapter 2, semi-unconsciously probably to Marlene in Chapter 12, and then again definitely consciously to Red 13 in Chapter 7. No, at the end of Chapter 16 it was. So that he knows what the whispers are, and probably as somebody who can carry or becoming her legacy. When she forgets, he remembers. When she then dies, he will carry on. This is how I see her primary role there, what she actually does. And then at the end of the highway, she doesn't want Cloud to go follow Sephiroth into this purple abyss that he created. It's like this portal, which is, she doesn't know what lies beyond that portal, so she wants to have some influence.
Right.
To me, it seems like she heals this
wound,
gash, this wound in the planet's memories, or in the fate, or whatever you want to call it, in Wall of Whispers.
Well, I mean, to match this directly to the way that you're interpreting the future of the project, which, you know, I think most people don't. And even if you watch old episodes of SEAL Team 7, you'll see that I was very much in the Zack is in this new afterlife. Like, this afterlife has changed. You know, that what we've done by killing the Whispers is change the afterlife, and that what Aerith has done is created some path in the afterlife for Zack, to hence her,
Oh,
using
I see.
Lifestream magic, and that was kind of just the way that I interpreted that.
Okay.
Um,
I cannot see a direct connection because there's not enough visual and storytelling evidence to conclusively support that. I could
sure.
see that maybe there will be something revealed in Rebirth or even later that shows, okay, she was responsible, maybe. But for now, what I see is Whispers are responsible because there are four of them.
Hmm.
This is important. There are four Whispers floating around the battlefield. And maybe it's limitations of engine, but I don't think so. That there are fewer
Soldiers.
soldiers, fewer units,
Hmm.
junior soldier units, or security officers, however you want to call them. That probably was the reason why Zack survived, because there weren't like 1,000, maybe only 200 or something that
Hmm.
he was able to endure. Um,
Right.
And the only one who's able to wield whispers is the planet, Sleepy would say Genova, which is basically the same at this point, which I halfway agree. Uh, or, yeah, those two basically.
So we don't think
Planet,
that
Genova,
we
or
don't
Sephiroth.
we don't think that what Aerith did to the portal was consequential.
Not to Zack, but consequential for them too, so that she wanted to create safe passage for them into what lies beyond. She wanted to have agency over where they end up, or how they go about changing fate, and not just follow Sephiroth and be at the whims of his
Hmm.
whatever he's up to,
Hmm.
his shenanigans.
Okay.
And this is, I think, this is also why her magic looks like her healing wind. But instead
Yeah.
of petals, or I think patches of grass, I think it's mostly petals, flower petals.
Hmm.
It's only those golden particles,
Yeah. The golden
probably
particles.
representing souls or memory or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Memory
And
or
I think
whatever.
this is also the reason why we see an exact replica of Midgar on the other side.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
because of her. She imparted her memories upon this portal and the world beyond, and then they step in, and it's the same place, just mirrored, or just basically the same. But then the Harbinger comes along and creates copies of it to hurl at Cloud, basically defiling the conjured memory of Midgar, and then Sephiroth destroys the whole thing at the end.
Okay. So the mysteries that Remake brought were not just limited to the Whispers. They weren't just limited to Zack's new fate, Stamp, or Sephiroth showing up way early. None of that stuff. There was more stuff. Um,
Mhm.
like who some people could perceive the Whispers, some people could not.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
the
just
Yeah.
some real quick regarding who can see the whispers. This is something I want to bring up in terms of agency. Who is aware or knows who they are, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
in this simulation memory thing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only ones who see the whispers is also confirmed by Toriyama, by the way, that those who can see the whispers are those who are able to change fate, like have enough sway over events that they
Mm-hmm.
could, or have the potential to change fate if another force came in to change things, like Sephiroth. And Cloud, of course, can see him because he's able to behave differently. Aerith is able to do the same. Rufus would be able to behave differently if given the chance. That's why he sees it. Barrett, Jesse, and Tifa are able to see him because they go on the second bombing mission without Cloud consciously. So they are deviating on their own will, basically.
Also, the Whispers made contact with them, and
Yeah,
that is
that
so,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
that too.
So okay,
So that's the thing. That's those souls who exhibit more agency over their own fate, so to speak, are
Right.
able to see the whispers because they're more
Over,
connected
yeah,
to this thing.
over
Yeah,
how they are remembered by the planet. Um,
yeah,
so these mysteries, and let's say Biggs having a seemingly different fate, how do you
mm.
think they will ultimately tie in moving forward? Do you think that Rufus's ability to see the whispers is now irrelevant because the whispers are gone, or do you think that was indicating something of importance later? Do we think that Marlene's bizarre connection to the planet and the live stream and her interaction with Aerith uh, has any bearing on the new mysteries? Do we think that, you know, uh, Wedge is alive? What do you think on that?
I think many things have, to a certain extent, bearing. Maybe not in the grand scheme of things, but
Mm-hmm.
in this new retelling to flesh out the story. Maybe even uh, be the basis for certain new directions. Um, I think Marlene, as detailed in one of my newer videos, I think she is the first step to uh, like reviving this Cetra or Saturn way, basically. Because I've searched around a bit and I couldn't really find definitive answer that or a statement that the Cetra are specifically a separate race that are their innate ability or reading the planet, shaping the planet, and then there are humans that can do none of that. It's more like everybody could do that. Cetra is the old ancient race from
Mm-hmm.
2,000 years ago, and some of them didn't like the lifestyle and settled, and then gradually moved away from the planet and lost the connection.
Right.
That's what. That's how basically Saturn just degraded. Fewer, Saturns, and more normal humans without a connection to the planet.
Right.
And I think this can be reinvigorated if children who are usually just more receptive to new ideas, to connections, because they're so innocent, aren't loaded with all the things else are loaded with. If brought up correctly, if they're brought up the Saturn way, people with more and more connections to the planet could be created, so to speak, or brought up.
Mm-hmm.
That's just as an idea, and I think Marlene acts as kind of Aerith's successor. It's
Mm-hmm.
even portrayed this way in Advent Children
Advent
because
Children, yeah.
yeah, she feels Aerith when uh, like a
Water,
stir in the live stream
yeah.
with through water with the
Mm-hmm.
water droplet. She dresses kind of like Aerith with a similar hairdo and the ribbon on her hair instead of just the ribbon on her arm, like all the other characters. So there's something going on there. So Marlene definitely has more connection than your average human to the planet. I think this could come in handy at some point, or at least be part of this new narrative.
What about Biggs?
Bi-
Where's
yeah,
Biggs?
Biggs, since Avalanche and Wutai and Shinra, this triangle has been established as being this new thing, this new conflict, and the war was only put on pause, and the old guard Avalanche miraculously are still around and operating. And there's Avalanche HQ, which are not armed as heavily, but still there's Avalanche cells all over the place. And Wutai apparently seems to be working together with the Orc Guard Avalanche, and they have promised them all the material in Midgar or even in the world or whatever if they work together, Wutai and Avalanche. This this whole thing is basically a new strand of narrative that's will most likely flesh out this whole Shinra arc and Wutai, which is not just an optional place anymore, but intrinsically tied into this whole structure of the lore and the world and the story. And I think Biggs is then part of it, since he's now I believe, alive in the same continuity as Cloud, because
Okay.
in this changed continuity, which has overwritten the old one, conceptually, um, Biggs is now alive because of the changes they did during the Midgar segment, and the Whispers and Fate were not able to correct those changes anymore because they are now undone. Wedge, I don't know if he survives the fall. Yes. If he didn't, no. This is also something I'm 50-50 on, if Wedge survived or not.
Yeah.
I hope he's, as morbid as it sounds or evil as it sounds, I hope he's dead, because this would mean, okay, Biggs is now alive. Wedge is now alive, and who else is all alive? So many slum dwellers are alive now because they were evacuated from before Platefall. So many are alive, and yes, I think Jessie's dead, and might play a role in Zack's reality, because she's also so much in pain because she caused all the suffering with her bombs. But Wedge, but on the other hand, he doesn't really have a character arc. His backstory is still missing. So something needs to be done there, in my opinion. Jesse had a character arc and backstory and motivation to join Avalanche. Biggs and Wedge hadn't. So it could be that Wedge turns up in some point, at some point in some form. But Biggs is pretty much the main, also visual proof that fate has changed, things have changed. Everything that has changed during Midgar segment is now committed to this new continuity moving forward, and it's a result of us defying fate. That's how I stand with Biggs and Wedge.
Okay, so that's great.
Before we move forward, I think I've derailed the previous question a little bit because we weren't talking about the ultimate villain and bosses and fights at the end of Rebirth.
I would like your thoughts on how we end that in a way that isn't too Kingdom Heartsy.
Yeah. I haven't put too much thought into it, but certainly there is a Genoa fight happening. I think this is a given.
Sure.
Yeah. If it ends at the World Maze, it makes sense. There's also Genoa Death there we fight, which is basically then a prelude to what happens after. In the original game, since that game doesn't end there, it's just Cloud breaking down and submitting to Sephiroth and handing over the black materia. But since Cloud has already more problems and issues and breakdowns in Remake, I think this will keep going in Rebirth. More breakdowns, more weird stuff, and just keep this mystery going. As we talked before, he remembers Zack at some point, that he was there with him. And this is where your idea comes in, and the more I think about it, the more it makes sense in some way. That's the final battle of Rebirth. Will not be just another Sephiroth, because that would be a meme at some point.
Yeah.
So Remake ends with Sephiroth battle, Rebirth ends with a Sephiroth battle, and then the third game also ends with that Sephiroth battle. Has to, kind of, because Sephiroth is the big bad villain. Your proposition is we fight Cloud. And I think this is entirely possible, because if his breakdown is so bad that he's submitting to Sephiroth, has also no connection to Zack anymore, and is just in this weird mind space that he doesn't really know who he is anymore. He's been a fraud. He's a Sephiroth copy or clone made up by Hojo and all those things. Hasn't even received a number, which I think is foreshadowed in the additional Cosmos theater presentation that Sephiroth conjured with the black cloak that has not a number. Just as reference. I think that's a reference to Cloud not having a number, but still being a kind of a Sephiroth puppet.
Sure, yeah.
And he becomes Sephiroth there this black cloaked figure becomes Sephiroth in this presentation, kills Tifa and Barret. So this could be foreshadowing for a Cloud submitting to Sephiroth, basically becoming entirely Sephiroth puppet and then attacking his own friends without having a number. This is entirely possible. The question is only, are we in control of Cloud? Or are we in control of the party?
Man, I mean, I personally have a preference. I would love to stay in control of Cloud for that.
You mean, same. Because it's Cloud's journey, it's Cloud's story. We need to be in control of him. And then attacking our own party members, man, this would break the player. And this would be a very, very interesting end to Rebirth, and which is I think repeatedly, or at least once, likened to the low point. Like, it's the middle of the trilogy,
right?
And it's a low point for all characters. It's where everything goes to crap. So this is how you do it. You make Cloud not the villain, but make Cloud break down to the point that he thinks he is on Sephiroth's side or whatever, and just attacks his own friends and has lost connection to everybody that makes up what he is. And then he's truly lost, basically. And then after the fight, however it ends, maybe Cloud starts breaking down more and more. Maybe it's kind of like Zack's last stand. He just keeps fighting, but it just keeps breaking down. He's closer and closer to death. Maybe something similar to Cloud, that it's not like the others will overwhelm Cloud and Cloud just dies or something, but that the battle itself, or Cloud's consciousness and visuals or whatever, to break down more and more.
Right.
And he's suddenly just in this weird limbo state that he doesn't know what happens anymore. Maybe then it switches to the others. And then Cloud stops attacking them and goes to bring the black materia, or maybe black materia delivery happens first and then the battle happens. It's hard to say. Or maybe the battle ends because the whole place breaks down, as it did in the original game, and then Cloud is lost and the others have to flee. Something like that.
Absolutely. I could see all of that. So
maybe there's even another mind battle, Cloud against Sephiroth, but you're in control now.
Maybe, yeah. I do think
something.
I do know that one of the several interviews have actually confirmed that that Sephiroth will continue to play a greater role in upcoming parts. And I don't think it just means the Nibelheim flashback. It seems like the takeaway from that is that, hey, we know you're a little concerned about how much Sephiroth was in this game. Too bad. Get used to it. Like, that was almost the tone of the responses, and those were as I believe the July of 2020 Famitsu even said that, and that was
could be
2 years ago. So it's been in the works that Sephiroth is going to have a much more much more presence throughout the story, instead of being quite the phantom that you're chasing. Although I do think that's still part of the struggle here. In terms of mysteries with Remake, I do want to get to this next question, which is what mystery in Remake and Rebirth are you the most personally excited or curious about?
It's hard to say and pinpoint exactly, but one that I'm very curious, of course, which is the most unknown, is what the hell is up with Zack? How is he going to be integrated into the story? Are they just showing bits and pieces there of his journey to reveal more and more about where he is, what he is? or yeah, it's also a question: is he able to be played by us players or not?
That is a
I
good question. Yeah.
personally I don't think he's playable until Cloud loses it completely. So maybe not in Rebirth. It could be that he is playable in the last part, because then his role will become apparent.
Okay.
And
Now, do you think
just
that role
mhm,
will stay in a separate continuity? Do you think that he will become
yes,
playable in like the live stream and be there to like? Do you think he will interact with the live stream scene specifically?
it's possible. Yeah, I'm not sure if it should for storytelling purposes, and I think
No.
it's it's a private conversation and an event between Cloud and Tifa. It's
Uh
their
huh.
story, piecing everything together. And if other people start meddling with this,
It's gonna.
the
Yeah.
thematics of
It's
it
problematic.
undermines the scene. So I can see that the scene itself, uh, like Zack and others, won't interact with the scene per se, but I can see Sephiroth trying to prevent Tifa piecing Cloud back together. And it's possible that then
Then all of a
it's
sudden, Zack
yeah,
just
Zack and Aerith could try and
below the
fend him off or
surface.
something.
Below the surface, they're fighting.
Yeah,
So there's
because
this.
Sephiroth is everywhere. Sephiroth
Right.
is rebuilding himself on the surface. He's with one foot in still in the live stream as a separate conscious entity,
Mm-hmm.
and probably through Genova has also connections to the stagnant live stream.
Mm-hmm.
So, and through that and Aerith, maybe they're able to establish a connection and prevent Sephiroth from meddling with Cloud and Tifa. This is something I could see.
Sure.
Maybe it's a little bit fan fictiony, and I'm not a storyteller. I can't really tell it in a way that it sounds good or cool, but
That's
something
not your
along
job.
those
Yeah.
lines, I can, yeah,
Yeah.
this is something I can see happening there. But I don't think they're actually there to, like, Aerith is there to guide Tifa and Cloud to make everything better or whatever. This would feel weird. It's a Cloud and Tifa moment, and it should stay this way.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
Mm.
So, okay.
And even later, I think the lines could blur even further the longer we go into part 3, especially in the whole ending, which I believe will turn out differently. In my theory about Sephiroth's endgame, I propose that meteor fall happens, but then the live stream is not being able to come in to help, because the planet has been corrupted to such a degree that it's there's no help anymore, and Aerith has not the power that she once had because of the whole corruption. So meteor could actually crash into the planet, and then this whole Omega protocol could start happening.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, because then the planet will be in such a dire state that chaos could emerge. And it's even possible that Sephiroth is after the proto-materia from Vincent. Something like that could happen. That he knows about this and is trying to enact the Omega Protocol even earlier or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. But there's just some loose concepts trying to mix compilation lore with those new mysteries, which it's all speculation, of course. Everything that's going forward, like trying to find out what actually will happen in part 2 and 3, is mostly speculation. But
Yes,
since
all of it requires assumption.
yes,
We have to,
however,
yeah,
those assumptions are built upon established lore and established concepts. So those are just things I see happening,
sure.
possible, because again, I don't remember the exact words, but they did also hint in the, I think in the newer interviews, that they want to incorporate all compilation lore and elements into the remake project. They want to have it stay
Yes.
similar to the original Final Fantasy, like as we said earlier, the axis will remain the same, but they will incorporate more elements. And I remember, I think it was in the Ultimania interview that Nojima, I think, said that he wants Bonora, or at least says locations from Crisis Core, to appear in remake.
Right. He does. He does.
Yes. So those things can happen. So they want compilation lore to be integrated into remake. And this also brings me to another point. I don't remember if it was the Spanish or the German interview, but one of them, they asked about Before Crisis and Dirge of Cerberus being remastered or redone in some way, re-released.
Yeah.
And then there's the response by Tetsuya Nomura that there are no plans so far, or at least they don't plan to release it, or they don't plan to release them before the third part is released, something like that.
Right. Right.
Especially Dirge of Cerberus, because if they release Dirge of Cerberus before the third part, it will spoil the end game.
Sure. Yeah. It wasn't precisely saying, and a lot of people said, "Oh, well, this basically confirms that the story won't deviate at all," because but truthfully, it's more that the ending is a big mystery. How exactly. is mysterious, and so we can't bury the lead, so to speak. So that's obviously interesting. So okay, I go on.
Yeah, just one point, and this also makes sense that they want to release Crisis Core now because it depicts the past. It has not changed, but Dirge of Cerberus is in the future relative to Final Fantasy VII's events.
Mm-hmm.
And if they release that, it will stand in conflict with the new narrative, the new direction, basically. Mm-hmm. Whether it spoils actually the end game or it spoils just parts of the mystery remains unclear, I think. But as far as Nomura said or expressed it, it seems to me that they want to incorporate their Cerberus lore into part 3, which hardens my my idea of
the Omega weapon
being a thing. But I could be wrong. It's just it's interesting that everything I come up with and present in videos, that every time an interview comes along or a trailer is shown, that it does not contradict what I proposed so far, at least not directly. It more enforces so far.
Right, except for Finn and the three people in Avalanche. Okay, so no, we all lost on that one. We all lost on that one.
Yeah, we all did. We lost on a lot, I think, in intermission. There were so many things that we hoped for that didn't come to pass, and I think this was the biggest one. That was basically the kind of debunked. I think it's still possible.
Yeah, they could be code names. Different. Yeah.
It's code names, but so far it's neither confirmed nor debunked. It's just
fair. Okay.
Maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they even forgot about Barrett's resolution scene when they created Billy Bob and the others.
Yeah, that's because they probably don't have YouTube or anything.
Yes.
So here's what moving forward. So we do have a little bit of a surprise. So before we do that, do you have any questions for me specifically?
Specifically, so you asked me all those questions and grilled me on certain points. What is your opinion on the mysteries around Zack and Terrier and Beagle Stamp? Like just compressed. Not. I don't want to go off on a huge rant here, unless you want to. But
fair. So the way that I interpret this, and this has changed, obviously. I do believe that the quote unquote continuity we're in is a
Yes.
concrete and real one. I do not think that it is a simulation. I do think that there are elements that connect it to the live stream, which has this sort of omnitemporal presence. You know, like it's so the access to memories of the future. And memories of the future is an actual term used in the Ultimania.
It is, but I think it was in connection with Aerith's resolution scene, right?
Yeah, actually, more than that, but
Okay.
that was a version of Aerith that was closer to the future. That
Yeah.
was
Oh, right. True.
that was
True.
that one.
Yes. Yes.
So Memories of the Future is actually used a lot in the
Yeah.
Ultimania, particularly
Although
the Materials Plus Ultimania.
could
So
be, yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
well, no, specifically that's when it
Yeah.
was we started seeing it. So we're gonna see
Okay.
a you know slowly but surely. I think Turquoise Hammer has been working through the script in that, which is the localization script.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's this connection to the future, like something that sort of defies time and space within the live stream.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
that's the mechanism by which the Whispers operate in this way that quote unquote affects destiny. But I do think it is our continuity. I do think this is definitively Final Fantasy VII. Is it also a sequel? Sure, whatever. The
Yeah.
semantics of that are really irritating to me. I don't like to get
Yeah,
into them.
that's true. That's
Yeah,
also my problem with it, and that's why I had troubles explaining all these
yeah,
concepts because it's all relative. Also, memories of the future, future compared to what? If we say
right.
whatever happens in Midgar is the present we play through as the player, and
Mm,
from this point on, memories of the future. Yes, those are in the future of this point. But
right,
this doesn't mean that the planet is already at its end and the future on the planet's surface, the actual reality,
right.
is the future, and what we play through is the past, basically. So it's I think it's semantics, and this is also a bit irritating to me. So I agree.
Yeah, fully. And so I don't like to get into that too much. Is which one is it? Because I think that's a reductive view of it. I think it's very clearly more than a remake, has sequel elements. Is it technically a sequel? I don't know. Like the jury's still out on what this is, right?
Yeah,
But it definitely has some kind of element of time and space,
yeah,
um, and the way that I see it is that we've got an agent that has direct access to the live stream's memories of the future, and then we have an agent that is manifested directly from the future. And I
mm,
think that what we're looking at is a battle between those two forces. Sephiroth
mm.
being a manifestation from the actual future, and
Yes,
part of the reason I believe that is as silly as this is, uh, the hair length I think was a very deliberate choice.
yes, this is
The
also possible. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very deliberate choice. One that uh, they could have immediately dismissed with Crisis Core Reunion, but even in Crisis Core Reunion, Sephiroth's hair
Mhm.
is shorter.
Yes.
To
But
indicate passage of
but
time.
then we have Ever Crisis where he has the long hair again
I'm
in the
not even
flashback.
sure. I'm not even sure. Oh no. So
Yeah.
the Nibelheim flashback's a little different. Um, I mean specifically the elements of Zack and
Yeah.
Sephiroth in the I think the first or second chapter of Crisis Core.
Mhm.
So I think we'll see Sephiroth's hair grow in Crisis Core Reunion.
Oh, this will be interesting. Yeah.
I do think we'll see that. So that being said, I think that what's going on with Zack specifically, and what's going on with the Beagle and the Terrier, is that the Terrier timeline, quote unquote, isn't timeline. It's the new world that's been created as a result of
Mhm. Mhm.
the events at the end of Remake. I think that the party has stepped out of the universe that died as a result of their actions. You know, like, and I don't mean like death as in like a bunch of souls died. I think the world has changed now, and they've walked into the new world.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to go to Calm, and the very first stamp that they see will be in the Nibelheim flashback, and it will be a beagle, and that in our minds we'll be like, okay, so there's a layer of separation between Zack, who's in some Terrier continuity, and Cloud, who's in the Beagle continuity. But then we realize that's a flashback. And Cloud and Co., once out of the flashback, will encounter a Terrier stamp and go, what has happened? They might even notice it. They might not have time, but they'll see it, and it will be part of the new mysteries. Like, what's real? What's going on? And I think it will be revealed that quite literally Zack is alive in the current timeline. That Zack literally carried a version of Cloud to Midgar, and that there is only one copy of the party, only one copy of the Buster Sword, because the quote-unquote Beagle party has left the singularity. And this is an assumption I'm making, but I think it's an easier assumption to make than that they can write a convincing story that involves two separate continuities and make it matter. Okay, so I am assuming that the entire purpose of deliberately showing us that the party dies regularly without intervention is to show us that without the intervention of the Whispers, the party died. So the Terrier timeline, the true only timeline that exists, is one where Zack survived and nobody else in the party did. But why there is currently an existing party is because the Beagle timeline party has entered that timeline. And I think all the other mysteries connect to this. I think that people that could see the Whispers, who were shown to be able to see the Whispers even at the end of the game when the Whispers no longer mattered, will be aware of the changes. I think the reason that they connected Marlene with Aerith, and that Aerith has this understanding that things are happening, or that Marlene has this understanding that things are happening, is so that Marlene is aware that her dad didn't die, that Barrett is alive. I think that's the narrative purpose of that. I don't think any of these things are for their own tangential storyline. I think they all connect. I have a variety of reasons to think that. I think the most pressing one is that that the amount of narrative real estate that it takes is lower. And I think that they've already got so much ground to cover. And unless they want to make an 80-hour game, I think that that's probably what's happening. So that's the short answer. There's a bunch of stuff that's, tied into that. A lot of people have a bunch of questions about that, and we will get there. And I will let you respond to some of that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take like a little tiny break, and then I've got a surprise for us. So what are your thoughts on, I know you know what my opinions are, and I feel like you've even responded to some of them in your videos.
Yes. The basic premise I don't disagree with, and you make some good points and has some merits and will definitely create mysteries, like if they actually died and should not exist, then there will be questions. There will may see people that think, hey, you died, what happened, or something like that. It's intriguing for sure. So it does have lots of merit. However, I also see lots of logistical problems with that, and also in terms of keeping the narrative going cohesively without creating plot holes. Let me explain. I try to keep it short. First of all, if we say, okay, the past has now been rewritten with Zack alive. What does that mean? something has changed in the same continuity with Cloud and the others over 2 months before Remake. And it's might have happened on the highway where we see Zack's scene through some connection or whatever. Then this means that he had to go to Midgard with Cloud. Stuff happened, but since this is very much a difference to the original time, like the original chain of events, so many things would have had to have turned out so much differently, because Zack is probably not aware that T is now alive and should not be. So he would just keep going the same way about his life as he would. So basically, the whole Midgard arc would have ended up completely differently, with Cloud probably still being catatonic, being tended by Tifa. Like Tifa has now Marco and Cloud to take care of, something like that. Maybe Cloud is not even in Sector 7, maybe in Sector 5, because Zack wants probably to go there, to Sector 5. There's a doctor. He throws him off there, goes to search for Aerith. Cloud is there. Doesn't meet Tifa and the others. Maybe Zack is the one that Avalanche hires. And things will maybe turn out similarly because
that's the way that they write it.
Yeah, but the thing is, they write it, and it's not kind of a natural thing. You have to write it a specific way to make it somehow work. And I don't really know how they would then create this new Midgard arc to be the basis for this new continuity, where
they don't have to. All they have to do is they've got to explain where Zack went after he dropped Cloud off. And there's no rules on whether or not Cloud takes his memories while dead or not. And so, like, we see, and part of the reason I think he's concretely alive is because every attempt that we've had to make some justification for his existence that somehow injects us with enough copium to think that we're getting the same story somehow, every time has been met with an even harsher and more direct confirmation. And for me, the most direct confirmation comes from the fact that he is still damaged walking towards Midgar, and he makes it all the way there. And
he's damaged there, yes.
And I think but 3 months later, not 2 months later, he has plenty of time after he gets sucked up by Cisne or whatever reason he would decide not to go to Midgar, where he shouldn't go if he has even half a brain cell. So I do think that they will ultimately, all they need to do is explain why he dropped him off and bailed. He could have bailed at the gates. And then why, when he came back 2 or 3 months later with a cleaned up suit, Aerith is not there. And I think Aerith is dead. That's why. All they have to do is say, look, everything happened the same way, except for Cloud didn't have the Buster Sword, and they all got their asses beat. And that is way easier to write than a whole story that somehow has to fit alongside the original narrative and give Zack something to do, Zack a new role, a new relationship with Cloud, and make that not feel like a cheap, like exaggerated red herring. So I feel like it's easier to just say, hey, I understand that in real space-time that, a butterfly flaps its wings in China, and it's the difference between rain or shine in the USA. But realistically, they've already made butterfly level changes that have not had an accurate impact. So I don't think that I'm seeing any indication that they have that much care for the way that time really works. I think that they're not showing anything that indicates otherwise. And I think what we're really talking about is a rebranded version of multiple timelines. Sure, it's like the negative Lifestream, but now we're telling stories about him saving souls and stuff like that. And sure, it feels thematically similar, but it's a bunch of narrative real estate. So they've got to write all that,
Oh.
and it is. I mean, it
Yeah,
just is
but the
because.
problem is everything you said I can
Mhm.
apply to the exact opposite. I
Sure.
think to if it's in the same reality, you need to make sure that the continuity is solid. Otherwise, you just make up a bunch of reasons. So okay, now he's there, and this happened, or it's the now everybody's dead. It's just I think it sounds cheap to explain. How should I explain this? Um, Zack is now alive. Midgar arc happened similarly, differently. Nobody cares. It's just did, and now everybody that we know, or everybody that has entered the singularity and exited, they're now they exist now twice, or just once because they already died in the Midgar arc in some way. Because
Hmm.
yeah, foreshadowing whispers and stuff. I don't think this is what the whispers foreshadow. I think that they gradually started being killed off. The first Barrett, then all on the highway twice. This just shows this is just a narrative a tool to show the power of the whispers. That no, they do not want the continuity to change because it's near end game.
Hmm.
At first, you don't really know what they are doing, what they are changing. It's just messing with Aerith and Cloud a little bit, help Aerith not to fall down the balustrade. And the more we go on, they interfere in more and more, or like the changes get more extreme to the point of characters' deaths or
Hmm.
almost deaths, that they need to revive Barrett and save the others from certain death because of the bombs. I think this has nothing to do with foreshadowing that they actually died, because if so, then this would mean that the Whispers were not really memory police. They were just some newly invented force that entered the real world for some reason.
Hmm.
They're actually corporeal or semi-corporeal, just visually. And when they get defeated and removed, then every instance they intervened is also undone, which would create an infinite amount of timelines possibilities logically. That's where I don't really see this happening. So which means if we defeat the whispers and the the events they interfered in do not revert back to what they how they were supposed to play out without whispers,
Hmm.
then it's also extremely easy to explain this whole concept, because whispers are well, the whisper harbinger, but the whispers themselves are just extensions of the whisper harbinger parts of it. And the creation of whispers is whisper harbinger, and it is separated from space and time, or lives outside of space and time. That's why I brought up the analogy in the beginning with the control room and basically the
Sure.
simulation. That the Whisper Harbinger sits on his chair like I do, has this all the screens and keyboards and knobs and turns, twists
Hmm.
and buttons all around, and is able to just observe and look. Okay, there's a change. I need to fix it because somebody messed with. So there's a hacker. There's an attack. I need to make sure everything's all right. But then when the others go into the singularity, which is this control room, like if you now suddenly exit through the screen and kill me dead,
Hmm.
then everything I did on my computer, I changed programs, I made a drawing, received an email, wrote back, changed some files, whatever. Those changes still remain. They don't just go back to a previous state because I'm now suddenly dead and everything I did before was undone. That's my idea, because this is also pretty easy to explain. It's a space outside of time and space, or a place outside of time and space. Entities from there can just inject themselves into the events of Remake, change things, do things, go out, but when they disappear, nothing changes. Only moving forward, they are not able to interfere anymore. That's the unknown journey. That's what everything led to. The unknown journey is the result of us defeating the Whispers.
Right.
Not us defeating the Whispers results in a changed past that now branches into so many different things because each time a Whisper interference happens, a new branching path would be created. This is a logical conclusion. I think this is much, much harder to explain, or at least to maintain in the narrative, unless you just say, okay, all those different paths, branching paths don't matter. But this would be a dismissal of
Like,
results of the mysteries. That's what I see. And then there's also the things said about the past not having changed.
mm-hmm.
It could be the past from when Zack's last stand and before, but I interpret this as being the past from before the original game and before Remake. So whatever led up to the first bombing mission is still exactly the same in the continuity of the world, which results of the Midgar arc.
I took it as if it happened in Remake, if we saw it, fair game. And and I think that's the way they'll say it when asked about it in later interviews. You said the past hasn't changed. Well, that wasn't in the past, it was in the game. I showed it to you. It was there. Sure, it was in September, but September's part of the game. And and
sure,
here's
it's all possible, of course. But the thing is, right now, just talking freely on stream, it's hard for me to actually explain all the different pieces why I think it does not make sense conceptually, logically, and also symbolically for Zack to be in the same continuity as Cloud. Not because I don't want him to. I don't care if it's what they want to tell. They go for it. If it's a good story, I don't mind at all. Some of
sure.
your ideas brought up on previous Steel Team 7 streams are entirely valid. I don't mind as long as they don't meet up before Cloud breaks down. I think
And I think I agree with you there. I don't think that they could. That would break the story a little bit too much. So,
yes.
And I think that obviously as much as I would like to be able to apply things like Occam's razor to specifically the events of the game and the lore as an engineering problem, as much as I'd like to do that, something that's changed for me recently is upon looking through the entirety of all the writers' projects, that they're often much more bound by what story they can tell as opposed to whether that story meets the grounds for quantum theory. And unfortunately, I think they're much more narrative driven, and so I do think that does require assumption, but you can't do any of what we're doing without some assumption. And I think that what you do is you have to value what you're assuming, and I think you assume your assumptions are based on things like spatial reasoning, a lot of the detail oriented lore stuff, and I think that's definitely one of the things I love the most about your content is how strongly you do that. And I do think that they, as a developer team, are very detail oriented. They have a very strong understanding of their own lore. They rarely don't consider it when they make things, and so it's really important. I've shifted my my idea on the specific subject to a little bit more of a production development side.
Fair.
And I think that it's really hard to try and have a payoff that assumes that everything somehow ultimately occurs on this plane that never intersects with the main story, and other than a kind of metaphysical or behind the scenes way. Like that the experience is all the same, other than some deviations at the end. And I do think that just the level of payoff people want and are hoping for from a character survival has to be consequential enough that it will be financially responsible for them to do so. So I cannot imagine them at least bringing Zack into life at some way, shape, or form, even if he dies at the end. So,
here's the thing. I do agree that there needs to be a payoff. However, the payoff does not need to be right away. Payoff in your case would be, okay, yeah, he is now really alive. He's in in the same continuity, is running behind Cloud and the others, does his own thing.
He also gives the opportunity to travel to more places that are places from the game that maybe we need to see, but it didn't make a ton of sense for us as a party to be at. Like maybe we don't go to Fort Condor, but Zack does. You know, I mean, I think and I know that's a really uncomfortable space to look at, but I do think that there might even be segments of the game that we were expecting to go with Cloud and Co. that we go with Zack and Co.
Possible. However, the thing is, I don't see an actual. For me, that when you set up such a mystery that it's Zack is now alive, there's a terrier, and they don't see each other, even though they cross. And Zack is now in this weird space where there are so many sad people in the church and no Aerith, and nobody sees him. This does not scream same reality. And more than that, even if he is in the real world now, I don't see an actual narrative that makes sense to me to include him as this new mystery. If he's just running around doing his thing, then what's his purpose? What's his goal there? What does he bring to the story that is mainly driven by Cloud and Sephiroth and Aerith? So for me, when Zack is in this other space, he has now his own reasoning to save the planet, just like the others do, just from a different perspective. So the planet is already about to die. Sephiroth has all this grand plan and is so powerful and has thought it through and is probably almost impossible to beat now. As we've seen, Cloud cannot beat him even in his own headspace, which makes sense where Cloud is right now, in terms of his mind. But when he just look forward to the last game, the third game, when it ends, which has, as I hope and speculate, has a completely new ending that ends completely differently, or at least goes beyond Meteor Fall. That now it's not about just defeating Sephiroth and preventing Meteor from falling. It's about actually saving the whole, not just the planet, but life itself.
Right, saving the Lifestream somehow.
Yeah, if saving the whole Lifestream, making sure that since Sephiroth now wants, of course, this is not confirmed or anything, just speculation. But if Sephiroth now really wants to use Omega Weapon, this whole protocol, to gather the Lifestream, take over, take control, use Cloud to do whatever, and then basically play Genova, leaving the planet, go to somewhere else, but without Genova's essence. That's where Ode Sephiroth comes in. That he wants to be separated from this, wants to be his own person, completely his own agency. Doesn't want the corruption, because Omega also cannot. It needs the pure Lifestream to go, and the proto material filters out the stagnant Lifestream, which will remain on the planet. So he needs to separate himself from Genova, so that the influence, at least, that he is his own being, not dictated by Genova's impulses and instincts and plans. So then he can be, life itself, or the ruler of it, can direct the live stream whatever he wants, maybe even rule the whole cosmic live stream, whatever. This is all speculation. However, the idea is that to defeat such a powerful Sephiroth with such a grand plan, I don't think just the Cloud and the party in the world is able to defeat him. There needs to be a separate entity that wasn't there in the original storyline to be able to fight from a different side, where Sephiroth also resides, where Jenova is. Jenova is in this, or at least the cells and the corruption from Jenova is in this stagnated part in live stream, the negative live stream, geostigma, whatever you want to call it. And this would give credence to the theory that Sephiroth was the one responsible for making Zack, or giving Zack this new weird existence now, to help him defeat Jenova or keep Jenova at bay, whatever. But maybe it backfires because then Cloud, since he severed Cloud's connection to Zack, or vice versa, thinks he can use Zack's new existence to help him get rid of Jenova. However, I think that Zack's existence, or his new role, is not just for Sephiroth, but in the end, turn it around to team up in this, whatever this final battle will be, battle within the live stream itself before it leaves the planet, to fight over who can travel with, or whatever. It's just purely conjecture. That's he's able to team up with the team of Cloud and Co. He, Aerith, maybe other souls that he collected on his way. He managed to relieve them of their suffering, so that he can diminish the influence of the corruption. And then in the end, that's this whole clash between Genoa, Sephiroth, and Cloud, Aerith, and Zack. This culminates in this new ending, so to speak. And I believe that if this really plays out as I imagine, at least in concept, that the ending of that this would also be the ending of the Final Fantasy VII canon, because then it's actually the planet is dead, Jenova and the rest, and the corruption is there as prophesied, or as explained in Dirge of Cerberus with the Omega Protocol, and Omega and the live stream leave, and this is basically the good ending. And Sephiroth is also defeated, or cleansed, or whatever you want to call it. And basically the souls of all those we accompany on this journey, Cloud, Aerith, Zack, and all the others, their souls can now be taken into this live stream and leave to the cosmic live stream, and the actual cycle of life can now continue anew, which is now at risk. The cycle of life, as I discussed earlier, that the cycle of life is stagnating and almost non-existent by now, since the planet is dying. Because that fits thematically, that gives Zack a purpose. It allows them to create a narrative that is not as complicated, because if it's the
I disagree.
Just
I would say that
live stream.
I would say that the concepts like the negative live stream and like the extreme esoteric nature of this, like the need for like a convoluted double-sided double fork battle, seems more convoluted and less thematically aligned. I think it's more likely that Sephiroth's endgame is Cloud and his infinite potential, which is
that's for sure. Yes, definitely.
And the fact that we've got like this weird looming who's Cloud's dad stuff happening in the background.
Well, that's also another can of worms, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's much more likely that Zack's purpose in the story is to counteract Sephiroth's hold on Cloud. And I think that he needs to be in the real world to do that, especially if the party is now ill-equipped. Like, how is the party going to handle a Sephiroth-infused infinitely potential Cloud? Like, I think Cloud is way, way more capable of defeating Sephiroth than, Cloud and Zack I don't think that's a necessary thing that needs to happen. I don't think there needs to be a level of separation, and I don't think that's a payoff. I think that's just a way of telling the same story twice, but with a filler arc, with a anime filler arc along the way. And I, one, don't want that. And, you know, I did for a while because I wanted my cake and to eat it too. But now I really don't think that, I don't think that the story will be remembered as a good one if the entirety of Zack's goal, arc happens, in this outside thing where they all merge together. I think that I think we agree mostly on what Sephiroth's motives are. It's some form of independence and domination. I don't think there's a redemption arc in there,
Nope.
but I do think that he needs Cloud to do it, and I think that Aerith knows that and sent Zack. I think that has the most like sort of elemental connection to the OG, the themes thereof, and the writing styles of particularly Nojima. I think that, if we get into Benny and Maiden, sure, we could do like a Zack is wandering the live stream and that's a whole other story thing, but that doesn't feel consequential enough to make this worth it, personally. So
I disagree,
I
but
know you do.
but that's also the beauty that we're able to discuss all those things, throw around ideas, and still disagree, and hope that you probably hope that you're right in a certain extent. I hope that I'm right to a certain
I'd
extent.
be
And
okay
then we
being
can
wrong
just
too. I just want it to
yeah.
be
Oh,
good. And I
same. Yeah.
think I think the
Yeah.
same thing. So here's what I'm
Yes.
gonna
Yes. Yes.
do. I'm gonna have ours, if you can make a poll. Um and it's just Zack is in the live stream or Zack is alive. And while we do that, I am actually going to switch screens because we are going to bring in Sleep Easy into this chat. And then he's going to help us answer questions. Hey everybody, look who it is.
Hi, look who it is.
It's still Viz. Sleep Easy's here too, but he's
I am.
not going to be visible this time, and that's just the way that it's going to be.
I'm
Voice
fine
of
with
God.
He showed up last minute, and so first of all, hi.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
How's everybody doing? I hope chat's doing well. I hope Viz, you're doing well. I just had a second to catch up a little bit.
No worries.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Right.
The live stream, Zack being alive.
How did
Is it in the live stream?
How did that poll go? I didn't see.
It was 73% for Zack being alive, I think.
I haven't even checked. Is there a link? I think I
think it was up on it, but it ended. So I don't know if it just went away after that.
Okay. So that, by the way, is not an indication that I argued my points better or not.
No, the popular theory is the correct theory, right? This is how our games are decided now.
Yeah.
This is how the conclusion of video games concludes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop the steal. Yeah.
Yeah, stop it. Okay,
It's
so
all of a scam.
So why don't you entertain chat while I pull up the questions?
I had something entertaining of a thought when while listening to your explanation of the whispers I think that you've sort of established like several different sort of ways of thinking, which has also been fun to listen to, is that it's like you could think about it like this, you could think about it like that. I love that. One of the things that going back to like early day Final Fantasy VII Remake theory crafting is that the whispers probably could be pretty easily explained if you just look at them like Genova cells to a body. I think that's I think a lot of people get tied up in because especially people like us who like are aware of On the Way to a Smile, aware of like planetary corruption, Genova influence, but like now my go-to explanation for like the whispers and as far as like how people feel like that's changed things. I'm like, no, it's just the whispers act like Genova cells in a body, and they are doing literally the same thing to Cloud that they're doing to him in his body, so to speak. That's my entertaining side note that I wanted to add. I don't know if there's like even a discussion to be had.
Fully agree with that. I think
it makes complete sense if you regard the planet being co-opted by Genova by now.
Right.
That its planet is not really has lost the agency to Genoa's corruption.
I don't know if it's about agency. I feel like there's a struggle. I think a lot of what we see is that it's an active infection. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it makes also sense. Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things that came up when people would always be, because of my specific branch of theory crafting, when I talk about like Genova and the whispers and everything like that, everybody points to the scene where Sephiroth speaks through a whisper. And they're like, oh, well, that seems like Sephiroth is in complete control of everything that's happening. For me, that's more of an indication of it's the same thing as black cloaked figures. It's like partial ability to, interact and manipulate these things to a certain extent. So it's like, it's not the lack of presence of Genova, it's the fact that Genova is present, that Sephiroth is able to speak through these things or able to act through those things. Yeah. To a certain degree.
Yeah, it makes definitely sense. Also, I remember putting up a tweet at some point. Luckily I found it pretty quickly. The official English Final Fantasy VII account made a tweet. A mysterious shadowy threat appears before Aerith and Cloud. Prepare to face the unknown in blah. And then I retweeted it or quote tweeted it and said, spirits, souls from the Lifestream tainted by Genova cells, ensuring Cloud's path to the reunion with a pinch of Sephiroth's influence mixed in. Calling it now. And I think I was pretty accurate.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's it. I agree with that.
This was October 7th, 2019.
God damn.
So when one of the trailers came out, I think.
That's yeah.
No, it was just a tweet, but referring a trailer from E3. But it was pretty late, and then I would post a tweet, and I thought, okay, calling it now, it's this.
That's. I feel like that's sort of where I don't know how you feel about it at this point now, Viz, too. But like, I feel pretty certain about like my sort of perspective on the game.
Yeah, same actually.
A lot less questioning, and I think like maybe early on we had solidified opinions about like some aspects of the story, but now that it's been like forever in terms of like this game being out, and just there's only so much lore to look through. The only thing that we can really hope for now is like the new release and new trailers and new bits of information in regards to like the trilogy. But when it comes to like all of the present information, it seems like there's a lot of even though I see that there's some differing like opinions from like you and like even Baby Seal and I, like we all have like just slight variations with extreme differences in terms of like direction. It's only like slight tweaks. There's not too much of a difference. It's just like the perspective of this one thing can be interpreted this way or that way.
But the crux is the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is also why I think Zack won't be in the same continuity, because this has direct influence on basically everything. And if he's not in the same continuity, they have much more freedom to do with him whatever without directly influencing Cloud and the others. At least not at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think this whole Zack mystery is something that they set up at the end of Remake, which will be actually resolved at the very end, or at least in the latter half of the third game or something. I don't think we get the definitive answer in the next game.
Yeah, even though there was a statement by Nomura that everybody would understand what's going on with Zack by the end of Rebirth.
Oh, right.
It's all of like the mysteries would be resolved then.
Not all of them.
Like, okay.
No. There's no way.
Just the Zack one?
No, he didn't say all of the mysteries. Just
okay. I don't think he specified Zack either, though.
No, he said what's
Did
going
he?
on with Zack.
Well, fuck.
I'd need
don't
to
wanna
read the
wait that
interview
long.
again.
I
so
mean,
long,
there's
okay.
no way that we're gonna know all the mysteries of remake
Yeah.
and rebirth and return. You know,
Return or
I thought it was-
resolve.
revival.
It's
Or
all gonna be answered just
remember.
at the last end cutscene. It's
Yeah.
gonna be like the Genesis ending for DOC, right at the end, and it's like, oh, nothing is explained. Thank you so much. I'm
Mhm.
really glad about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, just quickly, you already said it kind of, that how I go about things, and the thing is why I cannot yet subscribe to a Zack as being alive in the same continuity is when I craft theories or try to come to conclusions, I try to build a foundation that is made up not as on or is barren of assumptions.
no,
Or at
no, I
least
get it.
so-
Yeah, yeah. It would be,
That's the
it would
thing. And
be,
if I-
it would be great in
Yeah.
science, but it's yeah,
The assumptions.
yeah. It'd be wonderful
Yeah.
if it could
I
be
thing is-
applied
this
to
chemical
storytelling.
mixed with this chemical,
Yeah.
sorry.
The thing is also when I try to make sense of a Zack is alive in the same continuity, I need to build a foundation that contains assumptions, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the thing.
I
Or at
always-
least I have not enough information. Maybe
Right.
we'll,
There's some outlier of like
Yeah.
information that we
But
haven't
you
received yet
do
to
make
confirm or deny.
assumptions regardless. So because okay, and I'll give you an
for sure,
example
yeah.
of some assumptions that you make that are not that have zero precedent. One is that somehow there's a disconnect between the memories that Zack can create in this negative life stream and ones that he perceives external to him. Meaning, quite frankly, the biggest issue with the Zack life stream theory is that he's carrying Cloud. And so you have to make an assumption on the nature of of whatever realities he's in, that is not concrete. You have to make that assumption.
Yeah, a little bit of assumption is always there. That's true.
Yeah.
However, if I need to make the Zack is alive, truly alive theory work, I need to make so much more assumptions and need to discard certain thoughts. Just to think, okay, they can sweep this under the rug. This doesn't matter, and I'm not comfortable with that. Not yet, anyway.
Sure.
I do think that that's one of the ways that like, and I've talked to Schrodinger's baby seal about this like constantly on like sort of the back end of a video where I was just like, I like am sitting here, I'm looking at this information. I think this was happening with the last like new reunion video, specifically when it came to Zack and like all of that stuff is that I can see this sort of diverging path that like Zack is taking in terms of like the concept of the life stream, as far as like, but the one thing that became super clear during that video for me is that there's such a there's not, the line is blurred between alive and dead so much true. in the concept of memories. It's like this is something that even showed up, and I wasn't able to put it in that video, unfortunately. I have no reason to bring it up in my next one necessarily, is that they, in the revisited thing, they're like, oh yeah, we wanted to represent like inside of swords, there's like fucking universes. Like that there are these like huge, vast, like there's these on like a molecular level, like there's so much more going on than meets the eye. And thinking about how memories work, and then how the white space is represented through like Advent children. There's just so many different levels of like spirituality and how that connects back to the physical world, that the line between these things is so blurred that it almost doesn't, to me, it didn't matter as much. I know it matters a lot to other people, like how that is alive or dead or whatever. It's like, no, the point is that Zack is going to have an incredible impact on whatever this new path is. And I think Rebirth sort of, for me at least, like without any more evidence to provide on the subject and more of just my own opinion, is that I definitely think that Zack is going to be more alive. Like the chance of him being more alive is, for me, more certain than him being dead at this point, just because they're really really lathering it on that like these two things are like there's a continuity happening from like remake to intermission story to the Rebirth, which it's told, I guess, remake Rebirth trailer to intermission Zack story. I don't find evidence of him like coming into like the church because to be like super, I think like ghost like. I know maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
been
would.
pointed out in the past.
It conveyed something incredibly different to me, which is that
To me, I
Yeah.
think you could read it that way.
yeah,
But for me, it's more about like, oh, like, and this is what like remake and rebirth have been doing so well for so long is that the contrast of information is like
Yeah.
the most powerful tool that they have.
right. The like the
available
contrast
because they-
specifically between his two appearances in the church. Like
yeah, and
one where he's like
the-
leaving the white light and he's not solid,
one
and
where he's
him
coming back
walking and he literally says, "I'm back,"
Yes.
and then he walks into a place that does not have white light surrounding it anymore. Like he walks out of the white light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still,
it's the truest definition of why I think remake is so successful as what it is because the developers are so aware of the contrast that is present whenever they do something that isn't in line with anything. And obviously
Yeah.
like the whispers are a huge signal of that, but it's even like just the smallest thing to the largest thing. They're so acutely aware of that stuff
Yeah.
that it makes specifically decisions like the church and that reference to Advent children so much more impactful. And also like the themes resonate in the contrast of that because they're thinking through these things so clearly, to me at least. But yeah, I definitely feel like the one thing that is going to be taken away is it's more of like maybe the mystery at the end of this is not going to be just like why is Zack back? It's more like, okay, well, how is Zack back? It's like, why is he back? Why?
I think that's a more
why was
important
he
question.
saved?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like if Aerith didn't do it, then if that is that going to be the question? Is this not Aerith's doing, but maybe a plan of somebody else's? And it's like, okay, well, that's something to think about. Like,
yeah.
I don't see the mysteries that we have right now, the overall mystery of that narrative being solved in the next game necessarily, but I do think that they're going to expand on the mystery. It's going to be like a mystery box situation where
Right.
we're fucking opening up one
Right.
to find that like, okay, this is not a concrete answer to my question. And that's something that Nomura has done in his writing constantly, where it's just like, okay, you think that this is the answer, but there's like a whole other plethora of questions that come from the answer.
See Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
It's a prime example.
Yeah.
This is me pointing at Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
So.
But the thing is also, you brought up a good point. I think we also brushed this topic that I don't think it really matters. Is Zack alive? Is he dead? Not ever, or whatever. I think it's just Zack exists now as some sort of entity that can move around, can think, can talk, can do something.
There's
Whether
no
it's in a
universe where it
sentence,
doesn't
space,
matter.
affecting
There
the
is no
rest.
universe where it doesn't matter. It is the number one question people want an answer to.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's Now that the thing is, it's terminology.
Yeah.
I don't think alive or
Yeah.
dead matters in that, because then we can discuss it to death.
Right.
No pun intended.
Yes.
Right.
But the thing is, he exists. Just where and what's he doing? That's the
big question.
The lines and the lines, as you said, Sleepy. That's really the crux of the whole thing. That the lines are so blurred between memories and reality and
life and death. And that's why this is so scary to people. Is because for a lot of people this is a game about life and death. And this is the game that, I mean, like, for instance, one character's death in particular, I mean, I've heard people really legitimately say that helped them in their formative years come to terms with the death of actual loved ones that they've had, that the way that that was handled
Yes.
was so important. And so, and it's something that I think that there was a lot of criticism of the franchise as it departed from that. Even things like Final Fantasy X, Auron, for instance. Auron, it turned out, was dead the whole time, but big spoiler alert, sorry. But like, in no practical way did he die, so there was no connection to his loss. So it didn't like, so to some people that counted, like, oh yeah, that's fine. But for many other people, it felt incredibly cheap. And so how they distinguish between life, death, memory, and not, it has to be done in a way that establishes what I think the general basis understanding of the crux of Final Fantasy VII is. And I think that is really hard to do if, in my opinion, things are as vaguely defined as, you know, live stream, negative live stream, etc. I think they need to have something concrete.
I'm gonna jump in because I think this is, and I'm from looking at the game as long as I have, there's always one particular moment in, I think, every sort of whatever theory I'm working on or whatever video I'm working on or whatever it is that I'm thinking about. It all leads back to this one sort of core concept. And it's incredibly difficult for me to, I've been like trying to answer this one particular thing constantly, and it's something that's coming up right now, which is that one of the things that Remake says definitively is that there's like two sides, but there's also the blurred middle, and like every character sort of makes mention of that. And if you look at in the past the way that Final Fantasy VII has treated these two sides, the OG is a little bit more muddled because of the way that they talk about the planet's intention versus the intention of humanity, and like whether or not one is good or bad, and like what is it thinking. It's not acting maliciously, this is just how things are going. But when you get to other parts of the compilation, it is drawing a line between those two things. And now Remake is saying that those two things somehow are meeting together and blurring. And whatever Remake's overall message and re-trilogy to me is answered by that middle ground. But the thing is that when you're talking about something that is blurred together, it is not simple. There's no straightforward answer. This is not a discussion about like Lifestream white and black, right? It's the gray in the middle. And that's what makes me as an audience member not able to quantify the answer of that, even with all of the lore and the answers that we do have. That's the one question that always comes up, is how do these two concepts eventually arrive in the middle? We have seen evidence of the aftermath of this sort of blurring line, sort of reality that we're entering in this new Final Fantasy VII. It's just we don't know exactly the intent of why that is in terms of the thematic language, in terms of the lore language either, because the game's not out yet. At least that's my perception of it.
Right.
And why it is fun to talk about still, and why there are different answers to these same questions is because the end result of that is still not defined enough.
And this is also where my problems lie, where I run into dead ends sometimes. I'm somebody that tries to make sense of everything, try to make everything fit, that it's entirely understandable, has no holes. And this is also why I so many times failed to write stories. I tried to write stories in the past, tried to develop games a little bit with the RPG Maker and stuff, and tried to come up with all those stories. I had so many ideas, world building, and always a few chapters written or conceptualized, and already knew kind of how it would end. Then I started to flesh it out a little bit and try to find reasons for why this would happen, how this would fit together. And I always ended up in this in this dead end, because explaining everything, or having a solid connection, a solid foundation for everything, and everything fits together and makes sense and is explainable, is so hard. And I think that's why many stories we all consume, be it games, movies, TV shows, they all have certain things they gloss over, or have a little bit of a
Right.
plot holes, or not quite explained. I think that's the issue, and I cannot let it be if it doesn't quite make sense. If I have to gloss over some things, if I have to leave plot holes open, I cannot work forward. And I think this is also the problem I have here with all the theorizing with the remake, rebirth, and all
Sure.
that.
Yeah, it's
That's why I cannot conceptualize a theory, a solid theory that involves Zack being in the same continuity as the party, because this would entail so many other things that I have to just ignore. I think
Yeah.
I think
this is
it's
where
just because
my
the
issue lies.
answer of that result is not
Yeah,
quantifiable in terms
yes,
of
exactly.
all of the other information that we've already
Mm.
sort of seen. And
Mm.
that's sort of like the eternal debate of like remake is that, is it the same or is it different? We've gotten a lot of information as to how it's going to be the same, but I think all of us who have know better, especially from when we started the journey of like
Mhm.
remake being made and released, is that the small examples. This is something that I'm writing into my next video, as far as, because I think people are taking advantage of the use of the term like just a few adjustments. Like there's just a few things that are changed, like to create more mystery. And the problem with that, people looking and saying, hey, that's just going to be the same game, then it's only a few things. We already know what has changed, and those changes are so massively impactful to the narrative structure. Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Edit that out in
the
post.
clear answer to this is that Sephiroth is a very, very easy example. Cloud is a very easy example of like those characters are not the same. There's something profoundly different about them. They might have similar goals
Yeah.
to what they want to seek out in the future, but that's such a on paper, you could do whatever you want with those goals and aspirations that these characters have in a different context, though.
Sure.
That the story would be definitely different. I can tell you right away that the Ore thing is like there's no doubt in my mind that is absolutely like the game changer of all game changers, and it's something. It's like Minerva, where I would go back in old theories and be like, oh, she's more important, and I have settled down on that. But like every time I look back at the Ore thing now, with like the more perspective that I have on like the game, you're just like, holy shit, that is like I cannot believe people are not freaking out about this more. Because like people
it's very much important. Yeah,
that one subject is so dense with like information about where that could go. That's actually, I think, in my opinion, the same kind of discussion about the Zack being alive or dead thing. Because just because we know he's changed, something has changed, but the implication of that change is like infinitely huge. It's like I'm not going as far as to say he could be a good guy or bad guy, because I think definitively we've seen that he's going to be evil.
Sure.
But it's just that one question where it's like the amount of possibilities this kind of Sephiroth can take are crazy, limitless. There's a ton of different narrative choices you can make with that kind of Sephiroth.
Right. And I think why people are more willing to, like from a surface level, dismiss that is one, because they don't know about it. Like, I mean, would you know about it if you just played
not in English?
And not in English, you wouldn't know. You would have no idea. You would have no idea. Two, is that there's something very tangible about like surviving. Like is the game gonna end different? Is the question you ask when you hear, like, when you see that the end of Crisis Core is different according to Remake. Like they showed an alternate ending to an established ending game. Like that game ended a certain way, this ended different. So
Right.
so it's very easy to latch onto that and say, okay, what is the ripple effect of this? What is the most important thing that happens in the game? And you're like, oh, Aerith's fate, right? So immediately people connect those dots, and I think that's why it has a much more, say, emotional reaction. Thank you. Than than needing to force a battle at the end of the game that looks like something Kingdom Hearts-ish. People were, I think, it's much easier for them to like kind of say, oh, they just needed to generate a thing, for the end of this game. Whereas with the Zack stuff, like, okay, this is real. Like, there's a real thing that's happening that I need to be aware of, that they want me to be aware of, etc. But okay, I think we've talked about that long enough, and I also have a bunch of questions that have come in through. We're going to start with a few Twitter questions, and then in chat, guys, if you want to start creating questions, I would like to get us wrapped up here shortly-ish. So if you want to highlight your questions, and you can ask it of any of us, any or all three of us. We'll start with a question, and Viz, it sounds like you want to say something.
Yeah, while people can ask questions, what just add to the thing, or to the idea of how much expansive or more expansive, or how much different Rebirth and the third game can be, while still kind of being true to the original storyline. I think they said they don't delete any location, so we will visit all the locations. Probably also hit the major events, story events, but in between, so much can change. Like the Toriyama also said that the Honeybee Inn is an example for how they are going to approach changes. The whole Honeybee Inn scenario is completely different, but it's still the wall market segment was in of itself. It started the same and ended the same, but in between, so many things differed. I think this is what we'll see much more of. That the lower Junon 7, for example, with Priscilla, will probably happen completely differently. It still end with us sneaking into the cargo ship, and Cloud being alone in the Soul Soldier in the security officer uniform, stuff like that. But I think the individual events will differ more and more and more over time, even though the red thread will remain the same. But what happens in between, wherever there's wiggle room, I think there will wiggle more and more and more. Just wanted to add that. And I think this will also reconceptualize certain scenes, and that's where they can introduce all the mysteries, or connect the mysteries, and introduce more changes without messing with the main thing, or with the themes they have, with the themes of loss, for example.
Sure, yeah. But I think the most important thing to take away from their statements is that when they say Final Fantasy VII will remain Final Fantasy VII, and when the crux of Final Fantasy will not change, Final Fantasy VII will not change, they're speaking only from their own perspectives, and who knows what that looks like compared to our own. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, let's start with questions.
I am going to start with a question from Night Sky Prince, who responded on Twitter.
Who?
He's just a small content creator, the Night Sky Prince.
Night Sky Prince?
Pride Sky Nins.
Great choice of topic, he says. Reviving a dead character, or even if it's something like being in the Lifestream, is a very high-risk move. Where's your personal line for this is too much, if you have one? And how do they avoid that? Bonus, do you see him dying again by the end? Which is in reference to Zack. So we'll start with Sleep Easy.
That's a really interesting question, because it's that line is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately after watching The Boys. Is where is my line going to be drawn in a certain context of like a show where it's like, is this too much even for something that has established its sort of like highest sort of like grasping concept, or like how, like whether that's drama or silliness or whatever. The idea of Zack coming back and dying, I don't think is too strange of a concept, depending on how that gets handled. I know that might contradict like maybe a lot of the other things that have been sort of tossed around. It's like, well, him being alive is important, but that's more important to the idea that like how he's going to be used just for this trilogy. And then him dying or him living at the end is of no consequence. I do think that the idea of this is to make everyone's lives in the continuity happier. I don't think that this is going to end so dismally as maybe the original, or so open-ended. I think if this is sort of like the sequel of a game, in my mind, that's how I see it, is that it's a sequel of all of the themes that have accumulated throughout the compilation. I do see it ending sort of in that way on a happier note, because even Advent Children didn't really establish a clean-cut end for Cloud's journey either, according to Nojima, where it's like this is just sort of the start of him like dealing with these things in a more like open way. That's how I interpreted his words. As far as where the line gets drawn, I think when there's the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, which I've seen, where like all of the characters are around each other and they're all happy, and they're like, the villain is getting like, I don't know, demoted to like, I'm just like, this is just a friendly game, haha, like I'm here with like my friend and we were playing a friendly game of chess, and I'm just like what the fuck. And then the old master comes in, and then like all these characters are together, and it's just like, I could give less of a fuck about that kind of ending. I would like us to not have that ending. Something like Advent Children's ending is interesting because it's like these characters have been guiding or a part of Cloud's journey in a bigger sense in the afterlife of the Final Fantasy VII universe. And those are so core to the themes of like what the Promised Land represents and what like a character's own resolution represents in this fantasy world, is these characters help guide somebody to where they are destined to belong, where they feel like they belong. And that's huge. So that sort of natural resolution feels better, but I don't want fucking everybody. I don't want Genesis and Angeal and Sephiroth standing like in the same church awning, right? With Zack and Aerith and that whole thing. That's too much. I think they know that. I think that they're not going to have this huge, like, congratulations Shinji moment at the end of this, because it just doesn't feel like it would fit. I think that's one of the things that makes Final Fantasy VII, and making it seem like we're, being respectful of the original, is keeping it within the characters that are important to just the OG story in terms of how that resolution kind of rounds out. I don't need a nod at the end with all of these characters from the compilation. And we've seen how they get used so far, and they're not like massive roles. Having them on the side, and like, let's say like Rufus gets a little bit more attention, like in the ending, and seeing his resolution, like I'm fine with that. If like Elfie is a character that shows up and Avalanche's story needs resolution because they set that up, I'm fine with that. I don't want this whole like Lifestream like extravaganza of dead people. It's like if at the ending of Obi-Wan Kenobi, It's not just the one Force Ghost that shows up. It's just fucking everybody, like just standing like there in front of Obi-Wan being like, we were here all along. And it's just like, wow, this fucking ruins everything.
Yeah,
why not
like
you just make one Force Ghost that's actually connected to the character and then just call it a day? You know what I mean?
yeah, no.
That's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Viz, same question. Where's your
Yes.
line?
Line is basically what I want from this project is to honor the source material, not by just recreating it, but just not dismissing it and building upon it. So as soon as they start messing with source material, start changing things, or as you said, Sleep Easy, with Kingdom Hearts ending where everybody's happy playing at the beach or just doing other things, this just reeks of pure fan service and has nothing real to do with themes, especially in Final Fantasy VII. And here's another thought with about the ending. The original ending, it was built upon uncertainty whether humanity survived or not. Holy was there, Lifestream helped, everything exploded, you saw the white light everywhere, and then the ending is there, and 500 years later, Midgar is just overgrown again, and Thread 13 lives, and we hear the children laughing. Nothing concrete, just, okay, the planet still lives, that's good. Nature has reclaimed the old technology, or the heart of what made the planet suffer. Shinra's Midgar, which has drawn so much life force and just evaporated it by the use of electricity. And I think this is also a similar message that Remake needs to have. It's not a resolution for the characters per se, but for the planet, for life, what happens to the world, not what happens to the characters, but to the world. And what I brought up earlier with Remake possibly ending with the Lifestream, or at least what's left of it, leaving the planet to feed back to the cosmic Lifestream and continuing the cycle of life, I think shows this beautifully, because then everybody would be dead, back in the Lifestream, back in the cycle of life, and good. Nothing about, oh, now it's Zack and Aerith marrying, and Tifa and Cloud have do this, and Barrett has maybe found
Yes,
Myrna's. Barrett has found Myrna's remains in the Lifestream, and then remembers her, and then he's back together with her. I think it's Myrna, his wife, or do I have? Because Dine's wife also is called something similar. I don't remember quite. Just stuff like that. I don't want that. I want them
I agree
defeated.
with that, by the way.
I want them
Yeah,
all
I agree, yeah.
like fading into the green Lifestream, and the white is there, and then we see basically a similar scene as we see in there's a Cerberus, where the whole Lifestream gathers in one point on the planet and then just shoots away into the cosmos, something like that. But yeah, I have a similar line as is Sleepy, and I also don't want them to just go so much off the rails that it feels like just thrown together fan service just to please certain fans, or just to inject certain characters just for the sake of it. Everything needs to have a certain meaning to either the plot, the themes, the lore, to character arcs, and it should fit together, all the connections the characters and their backstories and histories and motivations have. I think this is where what I want to happen and want to see. I don't care how the individual events happen exactly. If they introduce new mysteries, if those mysteries are very much off the rails compared to the original game, if it still makes sense in the narrative, I think this is fine.
For me personally, my line is I have a couple of lines, but I think making death meaningless is definitely one of them.
Oh, I agree. Yes.
Yeah, and I think there's several ways to do them, and I think we explored all of them on this show. Particularly, I think making the distinction between life and death so blurry. I mean, like having a conscious awareness while in a copy of life, of reality, feels like incredibly dismissive of what loss is. And so I think anything that involves a some kind of MacGuffin that creates multiple continuities, or that the afterlife is so non-distinguishable from life that the the persistence of your existence feels like just a change in stamp bags, seems would be monumentally disappointing, and I think, in my opinion, undermine the intensely humanist values of Final Fantasy VII. I think that the other thing that they could do to really undermine the core themes and experience of Final Fantasy VII is to somehow make use our experience of the original as a method of gaslighting us into thinking that things will change. So as much as subversion and like red herrings are part of Final Fantasy VII storytelling, if they upgrade that in a sense that has the only narrative payoff is to quote unquote scare us into thinking that things will be different, like if that's the way that they employ this what is real and what is fiction dichotomy that they put up, I think that's a line I don't think that they should cross. I think that the consequences of Cloud's mental state were very, very consequential. Like the fact that he did, that he wasn't authentically who he was, regardless of whether or not it was his fault, led to the potential destruction of the planet. And though he didn't, he wasn't responsible for it, the idea that, the only consequence of this new struggle be that we are fooled into thinking that we could have hope and then not, it feels more about us as the player and less about the characters and their relationship with the planet. And I think that's super important. I think you would lose something that's very core to Final Fantasy if we create a layer of separation between us and the environment, that's metaphysical. So that's my answer to that.
Prime example, Aerith's death. When they prolong it, that, for example, she dies at the Whirlwind Maze, as some people suggested. I'm totally against it. I think this specific death needs to happen where it happened in the original game. Maybe the details can change a little bit, but I think this one should be retained, because otherwise, it's, as you said, it's just, okay, it's false hope. She didn't die there, so she's still with us in the Great Glacier. So now at any time she could die and stuff like that. I think this will undermine a lot and not really serve any narrative in a way that matters, frankly.
Yeah.
Also, I get you with the idea that the lines between death and life are blurred and there's no consequence anymore. That's why I said that the cycle of life has been halted, that death is even more permanent now. That's my idea of making death matter. That whenever in this new continuity somebody dies, they're just gone. Their soul is lost. It's done.
And I agree with you there. I mean, I think that no matter how this shakes out, what we're being conveyed to is that there are consequences. That what we've removed is any hope that what happens now can be reversed.
Yes.
That it's created this permanence.
Yes.
So Okay. In Twitter, all the other questions, while good, are just veiled attempts to get us to confirm or deny the asker's headcanons. So I'm not gonna ask any of those. Um, so what we're going to do is look at some of the questions that we've had. Um,
I found one that's been posted pretty early on, and it's a funny one, just to lighten
it.
things up again.
Do it.
I think it was Kiki Punchy who asked, "Can we talk about how there's going to be a 25-foot tall inflatable beagle stamp in Calm's town square?"
Ah, yes, yes. We can. I know.
That would actually be the perfect thing to do in Junon, and I would be
Oh wait,
so
yeah,
for
true.
that.
Yeah,
I would be so
if,
for that in the parade in the march.
yeah,
Just like
yeah,
this giant inflatable stamp,
Good
like
point, yeah.
over.
right.
I
I mean,
would,
it'll be a terrier, but I know what you mean. Yeah. So, um, I had one, and then people started talking. Oh, here it is. Okay. So,
and then people started responding in chat. How dare they?
and in the end of remake, they hinted that Cloud and Co will have to do something different to beat Sephiroth. So, what is it that the thing that needs to change for Sephiroth to be beat for good? Do you want to take this one, guys?
You can
Sure.
go first.
Okay. So first of all, Sephiroth is what we need to remove is his will, his unbroken will that prevents him from, or prevents the Lifestream from taking his essence into itself. So he does not disseminate because his strong will and anger and connection to Cloud. I think this must be severed. His will, something we need to change something, or either break his will, break his connection to Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
or just something that undoes this hold he has, or this tether he still has to his continued existence as a separate entity. Or just leave him back, or
100%.
if Omega really flies off, just make him leave him behind on the planet, and there we go.
That's right. Just leave him literally secluded,
Exactly.
in like a prison of some kind. That wouldn't be like such a bad way to sort of top that off. I would say one of the things, just I'm going to try and answer this as quickly as possible. There's a part of an Ultimania that specifies that one of the things that Sephiroth does after we've seen him in OG is that he's now a recurring, he dies and comes back. This is one of the like the aspects of Sephiroth. And Advent Children has touched upon briefly that like it seems as though the life stream flowing back and forth will constantly bring either Jenova or Sephiroth back. But ultimately, it's also in the cards that they are defeated. I think that is one aspect of Destiny being undone that is terrible for Sephiroth in terms of that specific aspect of the strength that he had, or the strength that like Jenova has, is that I actually think that that's what it's a high stakes game for everybody moving forward. Is I think just the same way that like other characters can now die, in the way that people are sort of portraying that as like permadeath, I also believe the same goes for Sephiroth. So he's sort of, they're all embarking on this journey, and it's all on the same playing field in terms of like the stakes. Whether or not one has more of an advantage than the other is sort of up for debate, I guess. But I actually think that that connection is all that's left. In terms, there's no destiny connecting these two characters anymore. What's connecting them is just sheer hatred and the attachment to Cloud's will. Is Sephiroth's will attached to Cloud? So I think once that fight happens again, if it happens, that one where it's like Cloud enters his mind and then slays Sephiroth, and then he dissipates, there's nothing left. And I think the resolution there is going to be that Cloud has fully moved on from essentially the thing that is allowing Sephiroth to have a hold on him. which are these
Mhm.
like terrible things that have happened to him essentially. So Cloud is going to like elevate himself to a certain level of like understanding about his past and dealing with his issues to a point where Sephiroth can no longer be attached to Cloud. So that will be the end result. And whether he dies or not after that, Cloud or the party or the planet, it's inconsequential because at that point, Sephiroth will already have dissipated completely. There's going to be nothing left of him, nothing left to connect himself to these characters.
Yeah, that's also a good point. And I also think that I did mention this in one of the videos that I believe that the duel between Cloud and Sephiroth will happen again.
Oh
But
yes.
this time Cloud will win. It is possible
I have
that
a
maybe
lot
Zack
to say
and
about
Cloud
that, but yeah.
fight against Sephiroth, like Zack and him, like double whammy against Sephiroth to kill him, because Cloud alone wasn't enough apparently in the original game.
Well, and
It's
that's the
also a
funny thing because
possibility.
Advent Children, he also says, "Hey, like I can help you with this if you want," and he's like,
No.
"I think, but you've already beaten him once, so
Yeah.
just beat him again."
I
And I
that
think
was gonna bring that up. I'm glad you did.
Okay.
he's
Yeah.
not completely. I think that the point of him saying like, "No, I got this," is that's like Cloud, like I'm moving on. I don't need your strength. I'm using my
True.
strength and the strength of my friends to save me. Here I go. And then he helicopters himself up there with
Right, and
sword and everything.
I think that's what I feel like is that like Zack's narrative purpose is going to remain, like the crux of it will remain the same, and that's that it's to protect Cloud's soul from corruption, you know, or reverse it somehow. But ultimately, he is meant to empower Cloud, not be an additional force. Like I really don't see him being in the last battle. I do think that he's part of Cloud's journey to tell his story. That even in Advent Children, when we look at that spot, you know, like this was the birthplace of a hero, and it involved Zack's sacrifice. And I still think that will occur. I still think Zack will ultimately sacrifice himself to help create this hero that is Cloud. And more to the story, though, more to the actual question, my actual answer is that what needs to change is exactly what you guys mentioned. The connection between Cloud and Sephiroth has to be severed.
And if it's not possible, Cloud must remain on the dead planet and battle him into submission, but won't be part of the cycle of life anymore. This would be Cloud's death. This is also one possibility if the connection cannot be severed.
Right.
But
yeah.
Let's hope this is not
I
the case.
think that they've already set up a way that Sephiroth will be able to be detached from Cloud, other than sort of the things that we've talked about. In terms of, but one of the things that I wanted to mention very briefly is that one of the things that makes the Cloud thing imperative is him sort of overcoming his own thing. Is that the good side of things is represented as guidance and not force. Is that Aerith does not tell Cloud what to do. Zack does not tell Cloud what to do. Cloud has to find the answer for himself, otherwise it's meaningless. This is the difference between Sephiroth and Aerith is that Sephiroth forces Cloud to see things. He forces Cloud to make direct connections and essentially manipulate him because he knows that he doesn't understand what's happening. So he's like, I'm going to just tell you what the answer is, and you have to like just take that. This is actually something I was going to bring up before, but like this is what happens in Remake, and it mirrors the OG. Is that Sephiroth tells Cloud that he's nothing and that this is what happened, and this is literally what he's doing in Remake. Is he's like, I want to show you what happens. Like this is what happens. Is the fate of the planet is this. That's like the whole crux of how Sephiroth gets Cloud to the end game. Is that he wants to show him the fate of the planet. That's all Sephiroth just doing the same thing he did in OG. He's trying to establish a narrative for Cloud to follow for his own benefit. So anyway.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to ask two more questions and then we're going to call it. And there's one from DGS Sunder, or DG Sunder, for Viz. In your last video, you have a section about the meta commentary. The last question has me wondering, the use of an unreliable narrator was a major part of the OG. Do you think Square is its own reliable narrator now? Just to mess with the fans?
Interesting thought.
Yeah.
Maybe. So basically they tell a story that is not quite correct, if I understand this. I'm not quite sure how they would implement this unreliable narration of the game itself to us. How would you interpret this, or at least how they would attempt to even do such a thing?
Well, I think, one of the more popular theories is that all of this time nonsense and the showing of Zack and being vague is all their attempt of being an unreliable narrator. That this is their new trick. They're tricking
yeah, I
us.
see, yeah.
They're tricking us into thinking that the game's going to be different, but it's going to be the same.
Yeah,
And
it's basically the narration about Zack lives now and stuff, and brings Cloud to Midgard. This is just an unreliable narrator presenting us something that is not true, not real. And at some point, it turns out, oh, this didn't happen this way. It's actually happened differently. Maybe.
yeah,
I wouldn't put it past them.
I hope not. I mean, because that goes back to my big issue with that particular style of storytelling is that the consequence of the red herrings that Cloud as an unreliable narrator gave to the party were a direct threat to the fate of all humanity. Whereas here, it's just a threat to player expectation. And the vitality and criticality of those two things, one obviously has a more important impact, and the other is just like, it's like
there to mess with the fans.
if it's just there to mess with the fans, that is like the sounding horn of
this
of
is also a red line I want.
creative apocalypse. Like that just means, oh yeah, it's basically a gimmick. Yeah, it's so.
Yeah.
I hope not, and I do, based on everything that I've seen so far, do not think that they are telling a story that carelessly. Personally.
Yeah, same. That's why I also thought or said before that for me, everything they establish and they tell and narrate needs to mean something, point towards something, has to be a part of this greater narrative and the themes and whatever. And if it's just there for shock value and for a gimmick or for messing with the fans or for fan service and stuff, no, I don't want that. Because then it doesn't really mean anything in the game. It's just there for entertainment value. And this never really becomes a story that's then turns into a classic, like the original Final Fantasy VII does. Wait, what? Did something happen?
We got a raid from Legions. Hey, Legions.
Oh.
Welcome in.
Oh, I see. Hello. Legions Gaming and Friends.
Yes.
I'm waving and he can't even see me.
No,
Hi.
nobody can see you.
Hi, Legion.
Yeah.
Legion
Froggy
Gaming.
Roth from the heavens.
And here's a good question
Yeah,
to end
exactly.
on. Here's a good question to end on, because it's, it's the big thing, right? And it's from That's So Cosmic. And
that one, yes.
if Aerith dies, which is most likely, how would they do it? To me, Sephiroth wouldn't want to do it, because if this is post-AC Seph, he knows Aerith dying undermines his plan. If they want to make Cloud's breakdown and Rebirth, has lasting consequence, I think there is a clear answer of how she may die. So I'll just hop in on this one. I think the implication is that a corrupted cloud actually kills Aerith, and
Yeah, I've heard that too.
while I think that would be metal and awesome, and like I've been watching The Boys, and I think it really it scratches that particular itch. I don't foresee them being able to get away specifically with that. But in terms of where she dies and how, I I get I get what the crux is here, that Sephiroth seemingly wants to weaken Cloud, and that uh you know Aerith's death seems to have been critical somehow to his demise, etc. But I actually don't see that as being accurate. I don't think that we're in a position where Sephiroth feels like what happened to him made him weaker. If anything, now whatever he found in the future seems to have made him stronger. I don't necessarily know if he's trying to prevent Aerith from being dead, and we don't know if Aerith is stronger dead or alive. So I also just straight up think that if they change that scene, like the visuals, everything, that it's one of the scenes most people are expecting, and I think that they are writing a check with your favorite memories stuff that are going to stay the same, the crux stuff that they can no longer cache reliably if they change at least visually what that scene looks like. You guys' thoughts, and then I'll call it.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree almost like 100%. I think the one thing that people might be super fixated on, and this is something that I was also fixated on as well, is that I think everyone's going for big air when it looks like, oh, like Sephiroth's game plan needs to be like, what about the black material? What about the white material? Oh my god, those things are like, those are like planetary like saviors and destructors and all that other stuff. I think one of the things that Remake's ending does very well is it's trying to depict these events and associate them directly to the characters. It's like the destruction is associated with Sephiroth. The saving and the salvation of like humanity, or the side of the Lifestream, as they call it, right, is all represented by these characters. So it's like, it doesn't need, I think a lot more of this relies on what is going on with the characters rather than, oh, well, does this make sense in terms of this, this, and this? I think the way of viewing this whole thing is that what important thing changes when this character executes at X, Y, and Z. So it's not necessarily about how holy is cast or how the black materia is used. It's more of the context of what is happening to the characters in those moments in time that matters. And I think, sort of going off of what Schrodinger was just saying, is that Aerith's death is extremely impactful and really a crux of what makes Final Fantasy VII the way that it is. I have always been on the side that she's going to die again. And I don't see any reason to change that. I do think that if they cash that card, like Clark was saying, is that if they say that it's supposed to be the same and Aerith doesn't die, that is just 100%. They can't fucking say that anymore. That's it. They've lied, and that's just how it is. I do think that will be the same. I think it will happen in the same place, and one of the reasons is because it's so iconic. This is not like, oh, we didn't get to see the underground of Seventh Heaven. We didn't get to see the Avalanche base. Like, fuck the Avalanche base. If fucking Aerith doesn't die exactly the same way, that's a huge deal. And I think that's one of the scenes, that came to mind when people wanted a remake. Is just that one thing is like a huge deal. One of the things. one of many, but definitely high up on the list, like at least in the top 3 moments of things that they want to see done and handled correctly.
Right.
So
And
that's
because
me.
Heather Lacey makes a point like, I think killing women is a plot point so that a dude can have some needed existential and fundamental character development is tired and problematic. Hope that's not what happens. And I get that for sure. I understand that. I think though that with Aerith's death, it was a lot more than Cloud's development. It was an indication of the end of a species. And there was something very interesting about, not interesting, but like impactful for an environmental story to take the sort of last unicorn approach, and we're watching a species die. And it's also about the mantle passing, of, these people that were the species that was designed to take care of the planet. And now all that's left are people that don't have a, like a genetic responsibility to take care of the planet or some legacy. They have to do it by choice, right? Because that mirrors reality. We have to do this by choice. Like, how do we save the world? By our actions right now. It's not something that's built into us. It's something that we have to develop. And I think there was something really important about that. And if you undermine that, you're undermining something that's really was valuable about the storytelling in Final Fantasy VII.
To build on that, I think it's only for important for Sephiroth to use Aerith to mess with Cloud. It's not like Aerith's intrinsic existence is just there to further Cloud's arc. It's not. I don't see it that way. I see it as that Aerith, as you said, is the last unicorn. If she dies, an entire species or a just as the Cetra die off, she's the last one with an actual connection to the planet. This is the thing. The connection to the planet is environmental and also spiritual message.
Right.
Sephiroth wants to get rid of that. Also, she's become problematic because she wants to summon Holy with can counter Meteor.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about that, and the messing with Cloud is, I guess, a byproduct or just a nice side effect for Sephiroth, that he can just beat multiple flies with one hit. If that's how we say it. I don't remember how the saying goes in
2 birds with
English.
one stone.
Yeah, 2 birds with one stone, exactly. Yes,
I like
Wait,
yours
how does it go? How does it go in Switzerland?
2 flies with 1 hit.
Yeah.
So like a fly
swat
swatter.
2 flies with 1 hit. Just 1 hit and
Yes.
2 flies gone.
Which makes way
That's
more sense.
so
by
much
the way.
better.
Maybe. How's it going?
So yeah,
I love
that's the thing, and I think this is her death is so much more important to the story and lore and the meaning of all the characters and the interconnections between what actually happens. Plus, also, she wasn't just going there to die. She didn't know or didn't want to go there. Of course, she knew of the risks, I think. But as Tifa says, she always talked about the future and intended to come back from this journey towards the Forgotten Capital. So she didn't go there to die, but she knew the risks.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's this is what makes Aerith such a compelling character to me, is that she willingly sort of she can sense that she's being drawn to this place to do a certain thing.
Yes.
Right.
And the conversation that you have just prior or like earlier on in the game is like her dealing with the fact that she is literally like alone in this sort of thing. And
Cosmo Canyon, yeah.
She's the last the last Cetra, but it's like that comes with sort of this whole other layer to it when you start adding the fact that she is like, there's like a concept of destiny here and you do have a choice. And it's like her making that decision to do this thing on top of the context of what we've already established makes it that much more like she's making this commitment for some reason, while tragic. And that emphasis in that scene would make it that much greater. I think it would just hit harder than it did before, to have that sort of underlying context in there. So
yeah, and just to answer the question, also to top it all off. As I said earlier, I think it will happen mostly exactly the same, because, as you said, it's so iconic, it's so pertinent and important to the whole story of Final Fantasy VII, that it's, and also for the themes and what it meant to the creators back then. It's just so, and what it means to the fan base and greater gaming sphere, so to speak. And I don't think they can and will mess with that. The only thing I can see change is that Sephiroth messing with Cloud will be amplified. It's not just Cloud
Yes.
standing there and we press a few buttons and try to wiggle around and try to without any result to avert it. Only the cries of the party members are able to get him out of it. I have a feeling that Cloud will see more illusions there. For example, that he stands there and maybe something shifts, and he really sees Aerith. Maybe even will look like that he's the one killing Aerith, but then he looks away and it's Tifa. It breaks me even more. But then we see the outside, and it was just a one of the Black Cloaks, for example. Just thinking around a little bit, just messing with Cloud more. That he thinks more things are happening. That he's done so much more, but the scene itself will still play out the same. Just in Cloud's head, there will happen more. I think this is the only way that can elevate this whole scene to elevate Cloud's journey into madness. But the actual
I agree that's
event,
the
actual
underlying
story,
context.
yes, this should remain the same. Sephiroth will still descend from above and all those things, and say that Cloud is a puppet, and to Genoa battle with Aerith's theme. I hope at least this part will remain the same, because this was so strongly impactful and meaningful in the original game. I don't think there needs to be anything else besides what I just said before with Cloud's mental state.
Fair enough. Well, gentlemen, that was fun, and I really appreciate all of your hard work on this chat. And so, for those at home, please check out Cosmo Canyon Observatory, and the links are in the chat and in the comment section for the video. Also, Sleep Easy, thank you very much for your late addition to the roster. And I know that you're working on a video soon, and that should be out at some point in the future. And with that, we are going to